Given the old one, I use PowerPoint.
Little ones, just fit, just
Just
yeah,
roll
like
around, plug in.
I said my.
Call the planning and zoning meeting to order. Would everybody stand, please? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call the commissioners from my left, please.
Commissioner Grasso.
Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Bradish, Commissioner Frankenbach.
Commissioner Reed.
And Commissioner Bailey as chair. Are there any changes in the agenda? Excuse me, any changes in the agenda? Thank you. Any announcements? Okay, we have one item on the consent order, and that's approval of March 4th minutes. Anyone have any objections to the minutes? Anybody in the audience need any hearing or speaking? No, everybody hear us okay? Everybody turn their cell phones off, please. Thank you. Milton, are you able to put up our procedures on the computer, please? Yes, thank you. Yes, there is. If everybody can glance at those, that's how the tonight's proceedings will be done. All right, so being it's 5:34, it's March 18, 2021, we're in conference room 1500 Highway 2, Sandpoint, Idaho. Everybody sees the hearing procedures. Everybody has their cell phones turned off. Thank you. And first file tonight is file B0002-21, Marion Street setback, Eric Larson. Is requesting a 10-foot setback where 25 feet is required for the construction of a garage attached to a home. The garage is against Dutch Harbor Road. The parcel is zoned recreational. Project is located on Sutton Lane in section 26, township 60 north, range 4 west, Boise Meridian. Staff present the project, please.
Good, thanks.
Oh, any conflict of interest? No.
Okay.
No. You're welcome.
So the applicant is requesting a 10-foot street setback. Do I need to unmute?
No.
The applicant is requesting a 10-foot street setback for 25 feet is required for the construction of a carport garage with upstairs living area. This is up in the Coolin area of Priest Lake. The property is on recreation in the resort community designation. It's 0.19 acres. It's between two roads, Sutton Road and Dutch Harbor Road. The variance is against Dutch Harbor Road. As you can see here, this is where the request is. If you look closely at this map, where it says existing storage, so this building has the hard lines around it is what is existing currently. So the existing house and then the existing storage area. And the request is to add on this carport here. And so they just want to come along to match up with the existing storage. You can see by looking at this site map some of the difficulties with the property. Sutton Lane is the address. This is the lane that they're addressed off of. The street setback is 25 feet. So last summer, we changed our ordinance and we deleted the side flanking street setback of 15 feet. So there is no opportunity here to decrease this through that. So this is why the request is here, is because they want to add on to the structure down this way, continue with where it is located currently, and that's the request. So these are the applicant's comments on the application, looking at the standards, adding to the existing structure. Apparently there's a 110-foot cedar tree and root structure that they want to avoid that's pushing them this way. They didn't build the existing structure. It was present when they bought it. They're not infringing further on the setback is their reasoning. And then from their perspective, they didn't see any conflict with surrounding properties and public safety and health. So the staff looked over this project, reviewed it against all the things that we know about this property. Staff agrees that the applicant's adding to an existing structure. He describes it as a side yard, but nevertheless, our ordinance change got rid of the side, front, and rear setbacks. We look at property line setbacks and street line setbacks. And so because this has two lines on two different streets, those lines have to require a 25-foot setback. Because of that, if you were to move 25 feet from both sides, it definitely makes a challenge with a small lot like this, as you can see in the site map. The assessor's office showed that the attached garage was added in 1971, definitely prior to zoning ordinances and prior to setback codes. And then the applicant acquired the property in 1999, as he said. In the standard C is the public interest. Is this in the public interest? The only comment that we got, Road and Bridge provided no comment or said that there was no conflict for them. Idaho Department of Lands provided input concerning that the incident complexity if there were to be a fire due to the setbacks. In light of that, we looked at we looked at the lot coverage. We looked at all of the things on the property. It appeared to staff that that based on this, that this wasn't an unreasonable request. There's access on both sides. It's consistent with, these small lots, this request is. So staff recommended approval of this application.
Any questions of staff? Okay. The applicant's representative or the owner would like to come up and speak to the commission?
I'm not sure what what you want me to say.
If you have nothing to say to support your project, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I think he did a pretty good job of what we're trying to do.
All right, thank you. Still no questions? Okay. So, I will move that, please. So, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak about this project?
I don't have any names written down.
Okay. Fine. Anybody online? Gina?
If you're on Zoom and you have a comment, please raise your hand. No, I don't see anything, Brian.
Okay, with that, we'll close public comment and move on to commissioners' deliberation.
Nelson, can you pull that up, please, on an aerial? You can go get a little bit and look at it.
So the lot that we're talking about is this one right here. And he also owns this vacant parcel right next to him. So it's a lot and a half, basically, right?
It's actually 2 lots.
Actually 2 lots. So, and of course, these lines are off, like, these cadastral lines are off. So, yeah. That's why there's roads over houses and things like that. Yep.
Ready to get close.
Okay, Mr. Bradish, go ahead, sir.
Commissioner Brash, I hereby move to approve this file B0002-21. A setback of 10 feet where 25 feet is required for the building of the garage and upstairs living area. Finding that it is in accord with the Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following concluded with law, based upon evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the following finding of fact and conclusions of law as written. The action that can be taken to obtain the variance is to complete the conditions of approval as adopted. This action does not result in taking of private property.
Commissioner Braddis made a motion for file B0002-21 variance, street setback, Eric Larson. Is there a second?
Commissioner Reed, I second that.
Commissioner Reed, second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-5. Okay, we're going to move on to being it's 6:45. We'll move on to file zone change 0012-20, zone change Rule 10 to Rule 5. Lloyd and Tamara Jacobson are requesting a zone change from Rule 10 to Rule 5 for a 20-acre piece of property. Property is zoned Rule 10. The project is located off Garfield Bay Cutoff in Section 15, Township 56 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian. Staff present the project. Oh, conflict of interest?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know the applicants. I've talked to them about this project, so I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, Mr. Davis, thank you.
I will go out the door, but I will come back. No problem.
Okay, Mr. Milton.
Okay, that was the, yeah, we can let her know. So Jacobson's zone change, Rule 10 to Rule 5. It's located along Garfield Bay Cutoff. It's which divides this property actually. Applicants proposing to rezone this entire 20 acres. It does have a designation of rural residential. So it is in compliance with the comp plan. The comp plan allows for 5 or 10 acres. And so the request is in compliance with that. As we look at the zoning ordinance, we'll review that against this project. So they're intending to create 2 lots, approximately 7 acres each, and then the one across the way, across the road, is approximately 6 acres, I believe. So there will be an application, a minor land division application that follows this if the commission approves and the board approves. This is just a recommendation to the board. But you see here the Garfield Bay Cutoff Road. This is the sewer district, sewer ponds. We'll look at that in a minute. This is the parcel that makes sense to split off because it's divided by county right of way, so it's not contiguous with these. And then the request is to rezone the whole thing so it's in line with the zoning ordinance. The site does contain some map slopes. We'll look at that in a minute. No map wetlands, no waterfront or streams. And understand that those are the reports that we look at, the maps that we look at. It doesn't contain map wetlands. There may be water on the property, but not according to the maps that we use. So the soil, not drying farmland, well drained, which is a good characteristic. In the Selkirk Fire District, individual septics and wells. So this is the topo map that shows the slopes. And so the lighter pink is approaching 30%, and then the darker pink is 30% in green. So it does have a little bit of slope on it, but it's not affected drastically by this. So the comprehensive plan, rural residential area, and I don't mean to read to you, but I think it's important to review what the comprehensive plan says about rural residential areas. Because this whole area is laid down with rural residential designation. It provides for residential development in areas where urban services are not available. Slopes can vary up to 30%. Areas include hazard areas, critical wildlife habitats, where low densities reduce potential impacts to resources, exposure to loss of property or lives, small-scale agricultural uses, residential development are permitted. So that's that designation. So if I go back to this, and I'll show you perhaps in a minute the zone map that shows that this is all designated that. But then when we look at the zone map, I want you to see, so this is the parcel that we're talking about. And this is the zone map. So these are all rural 10 zones, rural 10 area, zoned area, what I'm trying to say. The red is recreation, the dark green is agricultural 20 acre minimums, and the lighter green is agricultural 10. The light blue you see over here is the rural 5. So this is all rural 10. And let's go back to the standards in the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance says that R10 in areas designated as rural residential in the comprehensive plan that meet one or more of the following. It says characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%. There's just a little tiny section in there that is 30% or greater. It's not characterized, property is not characterized by slopes that are 30%. It's not located in the critical wildlife habitat. It does not contain prime agricultural soils. It is not served by a network of public or private roadways that generally do not meet applicable roadway standards in this code. It is served by a county maintained road. It is not within a floodway, and it does not contain limited access to public services because Selkirk is available. It does have utilities, northern lights. It does, as we go back to this list up here, right? Northern Lights, Selkirk Fire. It has all of those features that are consistent with the comprehensive plan and with the zoning ordinance. And so R5 is in areas designated rural residential in the comp plan that are already developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acre density. And or, yeah, that caught my attention again today, and or do not meet the criteria for R10 above. So to me that says that if there's some area, some area that's R5 and they meet it, and they meet the criteria above, or they do not meet the, and they do not meet the criteria above, or they do not meet the criteria above. So the challenge with that is that because of the way that that's written, it makes it appear that if this area, if all of this area does not meet the R10 criteria, it all could be designated R5 based on that zoning ordinance. So that's why when staff looks at this and we review the code and review the law and we say this is consistent with that code because it doesn't meet those criteria. So some of these parcels over here are 5 acre minimum. There are some, there's a few, not extensive, but there's a few. But more importantly is the fact that the R5 designation do not meet the criteria for R10 above. Anyhow, that's why it's so important as we write zoning codes and lay down zoning designations that it meets the intent of what we want to see there. So that is why we staff would recommend approval on this project. Send it out to agency. There was nothing of significance from any of the public comment we received. Appreciate Panhandle's continued comment that if they're going to subdivide, they need to make sure that they can provide septic on those parcels. Those parcels are going to be 6 or 7 acres. So there should be adequate room based on those sizes and based on that soil type. There should be adequate room for septic. So appreciate the comment. We pass those comments on to the applicant for them to review. So again, staff has gone through and reviewed this project against the zoning code and find that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan because it is designated for rural residential 5 to 10 acres, and it is consistent with the zoning ordinance. So staff would recommend approval.
Any questions, staff? Would the applicant's representative like to speak? Project, are they here?
Yeah, I think they're offline. Is it Pat? Pat?
It's Jacobson, but yeah, maybe so. Yeah, that's probably.
Yes, this is Lloyd Jacobson.
You're live, sir.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Lloyd Jacobson. Yes, of course, I'm supportive of the application. My wife and I subdivided the lots south of there prior to the zone changes or rural R10 designations prior to that. That was always our plan to someday get up there and split it similar to the other parcels to the south. Also, we've had some interest from the Garfield Sewer District of purchasing that east lot because the lagoons are adjacent to it. So it'd probably be good if that was the case. But so I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions to the applicant? Okay. All right, so he'll keep him online too. Is there anybody else?
If you have comment for this project, will you please raise your hand if you're on Zoom? No.
Okay. All right, is there a Joe Brewer here who'd like to speak?
I'm in support of the project.
Thank you. And Barbara Branson?
Yes, I support this project as well.
All right, thank you.
Any name and address?
They were
Yeah, well-
stating their names.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Joe Brewer, I support the project.
Well, can we get your name and add your, we
We don't
got
need
your
your
name,
address.
but we need your address.
Okay. 140 Martin Bay Loop
Okay.
in Sago, Idaho.
And there's
I'm
my,
357 Martin Bay Loop Road, Sago, Idaho.
thank you. Okay, and no one else would like to speak about this project. Okay, so we'll close the public comment and open it up to commissioners' deliberation.
Seems like a good project, especially if the sewer district is interested in buying that piece. It sounds good if they can buy the land around the lagoons.
I'm ready to make a motion if there's no
Yes, sir.
further discussion. I move to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners on this project, file ZC 0012-20, requesting a zone change from rural 10 to rural 5, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law, and based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the following findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. This action does not result in the taking of private property.
Commissioner Frankenblatt has made a motion to approve file zone change 0012-20, zone change rural 10 to rural 5, Lloyd and Jacobson. Is there a second?
Commissioner Reed, I'll second that.
Commissioner Reed seconds the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay. So we're gonna get Mr. Davis back.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Being is now 15 seconds to 6. Our next file is Amendment 0016-20 Bonner County Revised Code Title 12 Text Amendment, Bonner County. Is requesting the text amendment to Title 12 to include the following changes. Amend Title 12-6 in its entirety. Some of the amendments are housekeeping in nature, including the reorganization, subchapters, deletions of entire process such as short plat and condominium procedures, amending minor land division and other procedures as shown in the proposal, up to and including the following subchapters: A61, general provisions; B62, design standards and final plat content; C.6.3, lot line adjustments and minor notational changes; D.6.4, minor land division; E.6.5, preliminary plat; F.6.6, conservation subdivisions; G. 6.7, intentionally left blank; H. adding 6.8, vacating total or partial of recorded subdivision plat; 2, amending definitions associated with section 3, adding Apex C, development agreements. Staff present the project.
So first, does anyone need a copy of the staff report?
Oh, I got it.
You've got it. Got lots of them. Good, great reading. Anybody else? Okay.
Any conflict of interest? Hearing none, no, would you proceed, please?
Thank you. So, the document that I'm going to scroll through is going to be the entire document. It doesn't, it's not like the staff report. The way the staff report was written was that it only had the highlighted changes that would be made to the document. I'm not the author of most of these changes. We had another planner on staff that has moved on to another position and is no longer with the planning department. So I have to give her credit, Haley, credit for all the work that she put into this document. And of course, the planning commission, the numerous workshops that we've had talking about the subdivision ordinance and the proposed changes and what they all mean. And so these are the changes that have been made through those meetings. There's the orange underline and strike through are edits that I have indicated that need to be made as I have reviewed this document prior to during the staff report process. As I reviewed the staff report, there were some things that struck me that so those would be staff's recommendations to change. The P&Z Commission can either recommend those or not. It's up to you. And then there are a couple folks that took the time to also propose specific comments. And so I included some of those in this presentation. And again, it's up to the Planning Commission how you feel and how you choose if you want to adopt those or not. But I have included in this presentation some of those comments, and my comments along with them. So the subdivision ordinance is a process where the county planning department has the opportunity to help somebody who is trying to divide their land and make sure that it meets all of the state statutes. The state statute that governs subdivisions and planning is in Title 50. It's not in the LUPA Act, the Land Use Planning Act. The subdivision falls into a different section. And so as we review, applicants bring us subdivision processes, plats to review. We have a checklist basically that we review all of those things to make sure that the subdivider has met all of those standards. It's a checklist. It's a yes or a no checklist. If they've met those standards, then the subdivision is approved. If they haven't met those standards, then the subdivision goes back to the applicant for them to fix. The fact that somebody wants to divide their 100 acres into 5-acre lots is based on the zoning ordinance. And if the area is already zoned 5-acre minimums, then they have the right to apply for a subdivision. And the subdivision is their right to have if it meets all of these standards. So as staff reviewed state law and reviewed our code, we felt that it was time to provide a few edits, changes, upgrades to this ordinance. Plus, we have also been working in this ordinance for many years, and from the experiences over the last couple of years, we have found a few challenges that need to be addressed. Boundary line adjustment is only in the definition section. And the boundary line adjustment is for those parcels of land that are not platted. Once a plat is approved by staff, it then goes to the Board of County Commissioners who put their final stamp of approval on that document. So the subdivision plat is a board-approved document. It's a legislative from that perspective. They sign off on it. The board is the only one that can change that document. So we'll talk later about lot line adjustments, because that's the only way you can change a platted map, or through a vacation. So the boundary line adjustment is for those parcels that are not platted. And the way that this reads is that if you are doing a boundary line adjustment and you're meeting the zoning minimums, you can move a lot line down to that smallest lot. So in the last few years, we've had a couple property owners what we've found is, say for example, they have 160 acres. This ordinance does not require you to get we do not review lot splits that are greater than 20 acres. So somebody wants to divide that 160 acres into 20-acre lots, there's no review by the county. We do look at it and make sure they have legal access, and that's all we do. And so a person comes in with 160 acres and wants to create 8 20-acre parcels. We stamp those, it's approved. Well, with the boundary line adjustment not being regulated by the county, they can then move those 20-acre parcel lines down to the 5-acre minimum and create a 5-acre lot subdivision without any review from the county. And so we're changing the boundary line adjustment to require an application with the county and a chance to review it to help stop that process. It's only happened a couple times in the last few years, but it is alarming when it happens. So that's the change to that. That definition is taken out there and it's moved into a regulation. Lot measurements, the challenge with lot measurements is we had to change it because we changed the way that our code was written in regards to setback or side yard, front yard. So this algebraic equation now matches the new code regarding property lines and street lines. So That's the change there. Starting,
How would you like to handle questions and comments? Do you want to hold those till the end, or?
if the commission has comments, please, let's talk about it now. And then at the end of our discussion here, we'll open it up for public comment.
So also in 12812 definitions L, there's currently a definition for lot line adjustment that hyperlinks back to, in the current code, to the minor land division section for the definition.
Okay,
It basically says, see this other section for a definition of what lot line adjustment means. So I think that probably,
So it's a number.
that definition, yeah, probably needs to be updated to reflect the new code.
okay. Usually the codifier catches those things for us. When we change numbers, they'll change those to update the code.
But it actually doesn't even appear to be correct to me right now, because it goes back, unless I.
Because the codifier
It
didn't
goes to
catch
the
it.
minor land division, which. I don't think
Has
that was correct.
changed, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other challenge with this code is there's, our old codifier got bought out by our new codifier. So, so you're gonna see condominium projects and condominiums deleted from this code. The condominium ordinance or statutes in state law are very onerous, and we feel like by having it in our code for us to review, there was a lot of liability that the county was taking on by reviewing condominiums. And condominiums is a type of ownership, so it's not about, if somebody wants to do a PUD or wants to create a subdivision and then condo plat it or create a, there's other things that are taught in that process, right? If they build townhomes or apartments, multifamily housing, those things are captured through the regular zoning ordinance. And so that's the reason for deleting the condo project, the condominium development. It was just an administrative review. And again, it was just because of the intensity of it and the perceived liability. And of course, this was a recommendation from, or a discussion with previous folks, planning folks that agree as well. But so letter C is very important to this document because we think that letter C will help stop some of the loopholes. It's unlawful for a person acting in concert to avoid this article by acting in concert to buy a parcel of land or sell subdivision lots by using a series of owners or conveyances. So our intent is that this will help stop the boundary line adjustment challenge we were having, and then also the contiguous MLD challenge we were having. Folks were coming in and doing that 20-acre land division, and then coming in and applying for minor land division for each of those 20s. And so we would have, 4 contiguous MLDs that were all breaking those 20s into 4 lots. And so this was the beginning of an attempt to stop that. So, again, just some more changes taking out. You saw tonight a perfect example of a lot that's split by a road. This ordinance will now recognize those lots as separate single parcels. Definitions, minor land division in the past. So state statute says that the county can define a subdivision by any way that they choose to define a subdivision. So this ordinance 5 years ago changed and redefined a subdivision as 11 or more lots or parcels. So a minor land division was 4 lots and a short plat was 10 lots. But if you were going to do a subdivision, that was 11 or more lots. So in changing this and trying to make it more consistent with itself, staff considered that We're going to stop the contiguous MLDs, but we will increase the number of lots inside the MLD to 10. Not that everybody will apply for up to 10 lots, but those that have, 50 acres and want to create 5-acre lots, we can now slow that down. But our goal also through this revision was to encourage people to apply for a full subdivision. So if they had 80 acres and they were going to do 5-acre lots, instead of splitting it into 420s, they would just do the regular subdivision process. That was the intent with some of this, and we think it captures that. As I read the definition of a subdivision, I think it was important to add the divisions of those parcels that do not qualify for a minor land division. So if I thought that needed to be captured and put in there. Again, if the challenge that the county has been having is putting in a transfer site or putting in an EMS facility or trying to address some of their other needs that they need with road and bridge. So this allows the county and public agencies to not have to meet the minimum acreage size when they're creating a parcel for their public use. We find this a challenge because it's hard to justify an EMS building on a 5-acre parcel out in the middle of somewhere. And so this is the intent of this is to, or a transfer site, if you will. So that was the intent of that.
I got a question concerning that one, Bill.
Okay, please.
So the county could possibly use that definition to find a remedy to some of the county roads that have a very small right of way. You could potentially create small plots along the county road to effectively increase the right of way width if there's no minimum in lot size. Like on Whiskey Jack, where it's the really narrow right of way.
So only for county, this is for county purpose.
Yeah, so if the county to increase their right of way, they could make tiny little lots along the existing right of way and buy it from the current.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Probably would
Interesting
necessitate
idea.
a lot.
I'd be easier to just draw a line and condemn it, right?
No.
Isn't that what
That's a bad
Sorry.
word.
That's the last possibility.
But that could be,
Yeah,
that could be an avenue.
Okay. Interesting thought. Thanks. So, letter C, we're in 612 letter C, talking about family exempt permits. There are several changes we made to this. One is that it currently says that an individual can only receive one parcel by gift or sale. Down here, it says, number 7, that if you've obtained that parcel through a family exemption, you can only keep it for 2 years. You have to keep it for 2 years before selling it. But this statement up here says that you only get one chance at it. You only get one parcel. So the question came up, does it make sense to have both of those standards in the code? You only get one parcel and you can only keep it, you have to keep it for 2 years before you sell it.
That's the history of that. There were a lot of people doing that process, just rolling stuff over to, here's a lot to Jimmy, Betty, Susie, Bill, family, and that. those would be sold or whatever, and just kept going. But that's why the language put in there was back in at least 2008, if not earlier, to try to curb that a little bit. So I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to discuss this thing. See if it does what the effect that we hope it did.
Yep. So the family exemption is basically, it's one of the only procedures in this code that allows somebody to split land without having to plat it.
But as it says, it still has to meet zoning requirements.
It does. It still has to meet zoning
It
requirements.
doesn't just say go
Yep,
give.
that's correct.
Quarter of an
And
acre.
it says that in
10
here.
acre zone.
Yep. It says that in here. So these changes here were just to move language around and match the process that we're using currently for the family exemption.
Let me pose a question on that. Essentially, this means family split would end up with a parcel that can receive a building location permit and put a house on.
Correct.
If an owner wants to, for sake of whatever, wants to deed to his child a quarter of an acre somewhere just so he can have it in his name, would that preclude this? That wouldn't be a building lot, that's recognized. Just like has always happened, just you come upstairs and you record a deed that says, I, Bill, give Johnny a quarter of an acre over here, and here's the description. Is that a legal sale under this, or does this addresses dividing the property but not ownership change?
Correct.
How did I hear that question a lot, but what if I would just want to give them, a quarter acre so they can put a picnic table on there and have fun in the summer?
Right. So what happens is when they come in for a building location permit, we review each application to see if that lot is legally created.
Right, if it's determined that they do need a building location. But again, let's put a picnic table on there and have a fire pit or something and go down there and enjoy roasted marshmallows in the summer. It doesn't preclude that, that's what I'm asking. I know that.
Well, because anything can be recorded in the recorder's
Right,
office.
and that's been part of the problem in the past. Because then they come off and say, well, I recorded this deed, it says I own this property, I want to put a building on it. No.
Yep.
So it's an awareness thing as well. So I don't know how you get at that. Upstairs, the recorder's office, if they were to start reviewing every deed that's across the counter to see if it meets land use requirements.
So those are captured, right? It just, and that's the change, one of the changes the county's been working on the last few years, 3-4 years, is to increase that communication, because that deed gets recorded, then it goes to the assessor's office, and now the land records department who have to draw that parcel. And so the planning department, we're getting to the point where we review those deeds that are recorded. And so we could tag that, send them a letter, let them know that doesn't meet zoning requirements. And we could tag it even further, right? Record a notice or record.
Well, that's what I was thinking, if something came across your desk and it was a quarter acre parcel in a 10 acre zone, you would have to go back to the owner and just say, this note will be posted with this deed, not a building lot.
Correct.
Doesn't meet zoning requirements.
Correct. A certificate of compliance saying that it's not in compliance.
If it's,
Right.
not in compliance.
That's the process now.
Very good.
And then adding that the family exemption is limited to a creation of 4 parcels. So. Another process that we have in the county that folks ask us is the bank won't finance their whole 10 acres. So they need to create a 1 acre lot so they can build a house and get a loan from the bank on that 1 acre. And so That's what this is, financing of a lot or parcel. Now, when somebody comes in and requests that, we give them a form that they have to fill out that's notarized and it's recorded in the recorder's office saying that this parcel is a non-conforming lot, that it's created only for the purpose of this financing. And once the financing is done, it goes back to its original state. So those documents are recorded. This 3, 4, and 5 are just to clarify that. Tax segregation form is the name of the document. The interesting thing is the word legal descriptions. It does create a lot of parcel, right, with the legal description. But I don't know how else you record a document without a legal description, right? So you got to know where it is. But the key is that tax segregation form. Hopefully we answer those. This is the boundary line adjustment process that we've entered. Again, it's going to be a similar, simple application, similar to the family exemption, but it allows us to review the boundary line adjustments to make sure that they're in compliance with the provisions of the code.
So Milton, how does this stop the kind of thing that you talked about earlier with the guy doing?
Yeah.
He can't do it successively because that's prevented in that first pretty much opening clause. But
that's correct.
How does it stop him from doing it once on a scale that might be more appropriate to do an MLD or a subdivision?
Well, that statement said that you cannot use these other tools to avoid the subdivision ordinance. So that's why we were going to review boundary line adjustments, because we'll be able to see if there's hey, you just came in last week with the document doing a boundary line adjustment. What, why are you going from 20s to 5? This gives us that opportunity to review this and capture them at the application stage and direct them towards either the minor land division or the subdivision. So where before, these just went straight to the recorder's office, were recorded.
Mm-hmm.
We never saw them, we never see them.
But there's no real defined criteria for what would kick it up to an MLD or a subdivision.
Other than that statement that says, because we defined a minor land division, right, is up to 10 lots. So if they can't use the boundary line adjustment to come in and create 2 lots, right? The purpose of a boundary line adjustment is to move a line around, so for whatever reason, but you can't use it to create lots.
Okay, got it.
And that's a fair question. Okay. Moving language around, the notice of land division procedure, we moved A and B up here into lot line adjustment. Numbers changing. Just the clarity that decisions can be appealed. The appeal process is already established in other sections of the code. This just tags that. This is the certificate of compliance process that we talked about. Just a simple change. Very interesting. I know why they took that out. Okay, so, right. Just some more clarification of what constitutes a legal parcel or lot. They moved that section down here. The recorded final plat or notice of land division constitutes a certificate of compliance with respect to the lot parcel. When an original parcel lot is divided by right-of-way as a result of some kind of government action, each of the two resulting parcels shall be deemed original parcels created at the time that government action happened. So if a road has come through a property and created two parcels, that's what this does.
Would you make sure that that ROW is spelled out?
Yes, thank you.
There is no such definition. So
We'll do that right now.
that should be any row in the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so moving on to 6.2 design plans, design standards. Again, trying to capture everything into these sections so they get referred to. Lot design is typically the depth to width. This section almost got removed back in 2016.
Yeah.
Almost. The board almost removed it. Depth to width is such a challenge in some of these. And if you could say that depth to width didn't matter as long as they designed the lot so a building envelope met setbacks, it would probably still be challenging, right?
Well,
Just a thought. We added a few more that talk about the specifics of lot design. It's got to be appropriate for the zone in which the division is located. Can't be divided by the boundary of city, county, zoning designation, or public right of way. This D has to do with some of the changes that were made earlier in the zoning ordinance. Common lots reserved for utilities are exempt from lot design standards, provided that that residential development's not allowed on those common lots. So again, if somebody was creating a subdivision and needed to put in a common leach field for that subdivision, it didn't need to meet the acreage minimum of the zone, but that's what it was for a common leach field. Our goal was to not encourage leach fields, common leach fields that breached onto other property lines or over property lines. And so the goal was to separate that from a design standard and helps with all the people living around it. Submerged lands, again, Haley felt that lot or parcel needed to be clarified throughout the document. You'll see a lot of that. Service utilities. We made some few changes here. One of the comments that came in was that we should indicate that a proposed individual well is a potential water supply. So that's number one, and then renumber the rest of the section. That was a good comment.
No, there was a public comment on the submerged parcel.
There may have been. I may have added it as a comment. Remind me.
Using the submerged land in the calculations.
Correct. And that really is an interesting challenge. There are some parcels in this county they're 20-acre parcels, and 18 of them are underwater. And so to say that they can use the 18 underwater to divide up the 2 on land that's a tough challenge. That's a tough thing to do. I get why that's there. So like, maybe that's why I did not address that. Seems like in my staff report that I took out that red because it didn't seem like the red needed to be in there, and I did take it out in my staff report. It just seemed like an overstatement. So if you're okay with that. Correct?
Which one are you talking about now?
Additionally, the water system is certified per statute. I mean, it has to be anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's part of our, never-ending discussion. Do we reiterate state code or make it sound like it's county code and it's really state code or what?
Correct.
So, yeah, it's not a consistent practice in the county code to keep referring to the state statute or IDAPA.
And then another comment that came in, indicated here in the blue, is that the fire protection plan to the satisfaction of the county or the fire district in which the plat is located. And then prior to final plat, the parcel smaller than 5 acres should have an approved water and fire hydrant system.
I had a comment about B question, maybe. My first one is a newbie question. Is it obvious, is it a term of art, what disposal method means? Disposal of what?
Sewage disposal method. You're under that. It's interesting, that language is already in there, so yeah, sewage disposal method.
Okay, and then my other question about that, was it intentional that you use the permissive manning?
Yes.
As opposed
It
to?
used to say shall.
Okay.
It was changed last year to may.
Well, and how, with your new number 1, how would that contradict to 2 and 3? Is that if?
So again, with some of the zoning, some of the small lot zoning, the water system is now a requirement, right? Or it's an option to require either a water system or a community leach field. So we don't see these very often, but they do. You know, the subdivider sometimes does decide to put in a water system.
So what that's saying is, if you're going to put in a water system to serve multiple houses, it has to be designed and stamped. But if you're going to use individual wells for each individual lot, then you use the new.
Correct. Yeah. Which is what occurs now. Again, these are some of the things that push people away from a subdivision plan, a regular subdivision. And so the intent is to identify things that encourage them to go down this path by offering some more options, right? And making it make more sense. There is no doubt that there are some subdivisions. I've seen 5-acre subdivisions through a minor land division come back and put in a water system for those 4 lots. So, and it all has to be designed anyway for the state. All right. Or for a good developer. So prior to final plat, parcel smaller than 5 acres. The request was to add that sentence there, or that suggestion. It's up to you. I get the point. We have many people come in for a building location permit. The plat says they have to put in a 2,000-gallon water tank on their property, and the fire district signs off and says, no, they don't. So, that's why it's more appropriate on parcels less than 5 acres. And again, fire district in which the plat is located, adding that language there. In the road section, there was a request, a comment made that exceptions to direct frontage and access requirements to allow for private frontage or interior roads can be granted in all districts, not just commercial, industrial, or rural service centers, providing that the access meets the applicable private road standards of the title. So this ordinance says that if you're going to create lots less than 5 acres, you have to have direct frontage on and direct access to a public right of way. You know, it's been a fascinating experience the last 5 years. There are literally pieces of property that are dedicated to the public out in the middle of nowhere that are not attached to dedicated roadway, that are dedicated to the public to meet that standard. Yeah. It is really bad. So this is really a good suggestion. It just boggles my mind sometimes, the regulation that we make people go through to use their property. And it just didn't make sense. There's several of them out there. And if you can convince the county to sell it to you. So right away offered for roads to be dedicated to the public shall be developed and constructed. So again, we're just saying that if you are gonna dedicate it to the public, we want to design and build to a certain standard.
And Milton, what process do they have to go through to just dedicate a road to the public? Because the road and bridge are not going to accept those roads until there are certain standards. We have so many roads that are just paths that have been dedicated to the public, but they're privately maintained.
Yeah.
And that's the mess that we've seen.
Yeah. And so again, if somebody were to come in now for a subdivision and wanted to dedicate that, it would have to be built to county standards.
Yeah, whatever they do.
So again, plats, taking out the word subdivision because subdivision alluded that it only meant for land divisions 11 or more. So taking out the word subdivision to not confuse. So that's the changes there in those. Number changes. So one of the curious things about this code is that there are other sections that have things that relate to other sections. And so N is an attempt to bring this requirement out of the environmental section of the code and put it in the subdivision. We think that it is appropriate to delineate if you're going to have, a vegetation buffer management area on the subdivision, it should be delineated as such. So definitely helps when folks are coming in for building location permits and they need to be 40 foot away. Having that on a plat map really helps in identifying it. So. But and it's in another section of the code. It's not in the subdivision section. That's that. So the this section here again, these changes were made back last year. Panhandle Health approval or the sanitary restriction. Maybe the comment was that language might be a little confusing, but PhD has you can either have a sanitary restriction on the map, on the plat map that says that these lots cannot be built on without approval of a proper disposal system, or you can have them checked off through their subdivision design standards. I can't tell you all about them, where they have to sign and approve those plans. That does happen on occasion. the comment was to rotate this language around a little bit. It was a good catch. All plats proposing lots below 2.5 acres. So it just says a sanitary restriction lift is required for all parcels, below 2.5 acres. Should say lots, parcels. And again, that matches the zoning ordinance change that was done last year, where we allow parcels to be created that are less than 2.5 acres, where we count on that. So the area of city impact, again, this was changed back in 2016, where if it's a minor land division, actually it was changed later than that. It was changed probably in 18, where if it's in the area of city impact, the city, it didn't require the area of city impact signature on the plat. What happened was when we created the MLD process, we would send these plats around to the cities if there was in their ACI, and they would hold on to it for 40 days and send it back and say we have no comment. And it just was, when we finally realized that the reason they had no comment was because it wasn't defined as a subdivision, then we understood and we took it out. You have comments in there from 2 cities asking that be put back in. They were the 2 that wrote and said, don't take it out. But it is pretty rare it's not rare, but 10%, 15% of the minor land divisions are in the area of city impact, maybe 10. So not to disinclude them, but we are working on the process to update the area of city impact. So if we could update that agreement that was written in 1994, it would be very helpful. Yeah. So a subdivision is required to, especially with some of these changes, have to develop according to occasionally have to develop. This offers the opportunity to pull back on that recorded plat if it's applicable, that they are meeting some of the standards after the fact.
I think J needs a word or 2. Doesn't read. I'm not reading well.
Right on the board.
I'm picking up the addendum sentence.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Think about that.
I can't find that. I don't know how to scramble it or add to it. To make it sense. Yeah.
Or notice upright.
That is all this needed to total or partial vacation of the recorded plat. That might do it.
What do you think?
It's still cumbersome.
It might be a little helpful if it said right of the board.
Right.
Of the board
Of
to
the board
total,
to total or partial vacation.
Right.
Reads a little better, I think, that way.
I think that's the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it should be to totally or partially vacate your recorded plat. Anyway, you either put it past tense, you put it.
Yeah.
Subjective. Well, the changes to vacate. The recorded plat.
Still kidding.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
interesting. It's a good catch. That's a good, some benefit there to that. Okay. Lot line adjustments, comment to get rid of the read and just call it adjustment. Did that, that's the changes you see here, read is deleted. Seems like there was one change in here, it was really small. Yep, right down here, applications for lot line adjustments conform to the design. It's taking out 624B, saying that if you're going to do a lot line adjustment, you don't have to build a road to county standards. And then again, the read, get rid of the read. Sorry, I know this is long, there's a lot here. This is probably the first time we've ever gone through the entire document in one night. The stuff that's taken out is so here, changing the minor land division to 10, deleting the 4, taking out the 2-year limit because we added the other language at the top, working in concert. So that didn't need to be there. Added the titles of these sections to help applicants. So this is interesting. Newer existing private roads or easements shall be a minimum of 40 feet wide. This is actually brought up by some of the surveyors that we worked with, suggested that change because the 30 foot wasn't wide enough for snow removal or snow plowing. So that was brought up by them. What this means is so there was a discussion or a request to remove the word existing. The challenge with that is that if a property owner owns a piece of property, it has an existing easement through it for access, they do have the ability to widen that easement to 40 feet. So I didn't see the need to remove the word existing because of that reason. They still have that ability to widen it. So that was the reason to leave it in.
So that means you've got a 20-acre parcel with an easement running through it that's 30 feet wide. You want to do a minor land division. It's required that you expand that to 40 feet.
That's correct.
Okay. And an easement doesn't count against lot density or size.
It doesn't
part of the lot. So it really doesn't. It doesn't change anything. The only thing it would change then would be a setback
That's
from
correct.
that easement line to a building.
That's correct.
And that wouldn't affect existing buildings, just future buildings. Just to clarify that, everybody here.
Well, and then even with the 60-foot public right of way, if you're going to have to expand that as well, it's not same
Same thing, right?
And then C says that all roads shall be designed to allow for future connectivity to surrounding lanes and roads to the satisfaction of Bonner County to prevent bottlenecking of traffic and provide adequate emergency access. So the interesting thing about this discussion is that as folks are designing their property and putting in easements for roads, the county has been concerned about future connectivity and trying to ensure that roads are designed in straight lines where they can be designed in straight lines. And so, or straightening out the roads where they can be straightened out. So this was actually a comment from the commissioners to consider for future connectivity. So where it's going to be appropriate is that there'll be a justification for it if there's a request to move it through. For example, there was a request or there was a subdivision that went in next to state land, there were neighbors that wanted that to provide access to the state land. That's not for the county to decide, because state land doesn't always give permission, even though it's there. So the county didn't require that to occur. So, there's times when it's needed or appropriate. Again, just number changes. Clarifying that the MLD is valid for 2 years for preliminary plat. So the minor land division application comes in, the staff reviews it, we send it out to the appropriate agencies that need to review it based on these standards. And we wait for their comments. We send those comments back to the surveyor and the applicant. The surveyor makes changes to the plat. They print out a Mylar, get the appropriate signatures, and then we take it to the board, and the board either approves or not that Mylar, that minor land division. All plats have to be signed by the board or approved by the board. So in doing this, in reviewing this process, this is the preliminary plat or short plat process, procedures for processing preliminary plats. There's a land use attorney that does a lot of training, and he does a lot of training for county boards, especially when there's new county commissioners elected. And several years ago, I was there at one of the trainings that he did for new county commissioners. And in that training, he talked about that state law, subdivision law, does not require public hearing to create a subdivision. And his discussion on that, and he gave some pretty interesting case law reviews of that, but he talked about the fact that the subdivision is, like I said at the beginning, a checklist. And it's something that staff reviews, sends out to appropriate agencies to review. And folks come up, and I understand that they may not want that subdivision going in next to them. But if the person meets all the requirements of the subdivision, there's no reason to deny it. And so the intent isn't to take out the public comment. The intent is to change it from a public hearing to noticing the neighbors around the property appropriately according to state law, 300 feet, and then allowing a response to that. So in this proposal, I took out the way it was currently written and bullet pointed it, what that notice needs to include: the applicant's name, the location of the property, a description of the proposed plat, and then the design criteria of the proposed subdivision, the standards that the staff is going to review against that subdivision. So, and then an invitation to provide written comments on that decision criteria. And so our hope is that as we send out notice to the neighbor on a regular subdivision plat request, they will have the same things we have. They will have the opportunity to see the questions that we're going to ask and the standards we're going to review, and they can look at those and double check the application, review the application, and see to make sure that it makes that, and then provide written comments to those standards. Just again, comments that tend to be emotional. We don't want this here. We don't want this land to be split up. The zoning ordinance allows the land to be split up. That decision's already been made. This is the design criteria of the subdivision. And so we think that, again, this meets state law, and it still gives folks an opportunity to review the subdivision application for a larger subdivision in their area. And through this process, the staff can decide to hold a public hearing. If there is enough comment and enough things that need to be addressed, perhaps it needs a public hearing. That can happen. And then, of course, also, there's always the appeal process. If somebody chose that they didn't like the decision for some specific reasons, those can be appealed. The decisions always be appealed.
I have a question on the appeal. So if you change it to an administrative approval through the planning department and it gets appealed, would it go straight to the county commissioners?
That's currently the way the code is written. Correct. And with the administrative variance, I think we've had 3 appeals, usually on denials, and they've gone to the county commissioners on that appeal.
So we're talking divisions of 11 or more lots.
That's correct.
Right here. So, okay, with this in mind, because some of the comments on going from maximum 4 to maximum 10 have been, we're taking some of these requirements out of those divisions that would be 5 to 10 lots, and that's weakening the system. The opportunity for the adjacent owners to review. Is that still provided in the minor land divisions?
It is not. It was changed back in 2016 when the minor land division was created. But again, we're seeing, I can't tell you how many MLDs were contiguous last year.
Right, and that's just behind that number. But maybe that even more emphasizes the need for public notice other than in the paper that it's not even there.
It's not.
But so, if the number's going up, most people, as we've heard testimony, say, well, okay, 4 lots, all right, that ain't gonna make a difference if it's just that. If it's 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, sure, that's a problem. But now it's 11 or 10. 10 does just by itself seem to say more of an impact. Again, if it meets zoning, if it meets the standards that are in the minor land division, then sure, that's enough. But I'm still concerned about even that the lack of adjacent property owners notice, as is portrayed here, through a 10 lots, no, 11 lots, yes. It's that old, that cut line bugaboo. So that's my concern. It's still, and I think that's one of the things that was stated over and over again in the comments. Correct.
Well, I guess, applying it to standard lot sizes, if sections are broken to 40 acres, somebody owns a 40, and it's in, a 5 acre minimum, then, then they could split that into that. But say they own 80 acres, they couldn't split that 80 acres up. So it's kind of like not only a number break, but a area of impact kind of break there. So if you have 100 acres and it's in a 10 acre zone, then yeah, you can break it down to the minimum. But if you have 140 acres, you couldn't do that.
Short of a full subdivision.
Yeah, which then would go through a plot. So it almost makes sense in my mind because it's kind of a size break too of the impact.
So this process is before we added all this language, it is the current short plat process. We currently do notify the neighbors for the short plat. But it didn't have all of this detail. In some of that training, he talked about sending out the decision criteria and letting neighbors know how these decisions are made. So I thought that was really appropriate, and it needed to be in there, so. The only change in the design standards between these two is the roads. And in the minor land division, the roads, there's some exceptions to having to build those out all the way. But if a developer's gonna sell those lots, he will build that road. He will build the road. Right? The easements will be in place. And so perhaps that is the, just let me look at that real quick. Got me thinking.
So that'd be meeting the road standards of 12-624.
Yeah, A, C, and D, right?
Yeah.
Which hasn't been done in the past.
Well, even B, because B talks about the networks. So a 11 or larger subdivision requires compliance with 12-624, but minor land division does not. So that B, that's been in the code for some time. At least 16, it doesn't reference the 2008 ordinance change. So I think it's been in longer than that, but that's the one that talks about road network shall be designed to provide a continuous transportation system to adjust to adjacent properties where topographical conditions warrant. So I just said, subdivided, you're going to look to see if there needs to be a road of some sort, even extended to the boundary. That's nothing new.
And I don't have a problem with that being in the code, B, because, I mean, there are waivers if they felt like there was justification for it.
Yeah.
From the board.
Right. But again, 12-64 does not apply to minor land divisions.
It does. 12-624, A, C, and D.
A, C, and D.
A, C, and D are minor land. Where in the past, it's not been at all.
Right. Because that's been part of the problem too, where it used to be with just the short flats, the 4-lot short flats. You'd get 5-acre short flats, another one, the next lot, 5-acre short flats, and no connectivity between them. So every delivery truck, every resident has to go out, back out to the county road, go 600 feet, turn left, go up there to visit Johnny, go back down, another 660 feet, go back up to visit Billy. So, and fire trucks as well, and the emergency vehicles and UPS trucks. So it is an efficient design. It may be cost-effective design, but it's not efficient design. That's what that was put in there to do. Transportation system, continuous transportation system, not 16 miles of county road with 400 cul-de-sacs on it. So I edging towards that should be part of minor land divisions as well, just so that doesn't happen if there's any opportunity for it to connect.
The challenge is that it puts us, so that, the challenge of it is the surety bond process and
Right.
bonding for.
And whether or not, in addition to that, and I think we discussed this before, should that requirement be coached with words to say, provide an easement to the boundary, but not build the road? Because you don't have, plus it's to the benefit of the adjacent property. It's not to the subdivider's immediate, unless that person goes and buys a lot next door, which, again, with all those piggyback MLDs, that's exactly what they're doing. They do own the one next door. That's the attempt to try to get the 11 or the 10 together beyond that. So the 10 are considered in the division and its road. But what about the next 10? And the next 10? And the one behind.
I don't know how you include C and not include B.
Yeah, it,
Because C calls out B.
she it calls up, but it's the intent of the sentence is the same too. Very
Yeah.
similar.
It is.
So you're right. You specifically say except for in that C, say except for, includes B except for. So you can do or you don't.
Okay, good catch.
Discuss it.
Hang on. I thought we were almost done. Okay, so the standards of review of applications, I just updated this language to match the change. Indicating that the following standards apply in making a decision on approval or denial of a preliminary plat. The board shall confirm the following standards in rendering its decisions on all applications for final plat. And then the final plat contents, again, these are in other sections. So I'll move up there above. Procedural for final plat review and approval. There was a comment to change blueprint to check print, which nobody uses blueprint anymore. Digital submission of a plat, that was moved up to a different section. Conservation subdivisions, just a number change, but indicating that a conservation subdivision does require a conditional use permit. The reason for that is because a conservation subdivision has the potential to create lots smaller than zoning, and any change in zoning requires public hearings. The conditional use permit process is currently the process used for a conservation subdivision. It's a tool not used very much in this county, maybe once, maybe twice, I'm not sure. And that's why I use it. Very often. Again, number changes. Again, updates to the front, rear, side, property line, and street setbacks. Vacation, total, partial, and recorded subdivision plat. Currently, there's nothing in our code that talks about vacations. We just follow state statute. If somebody wants to vacate a plat or a dedicated right of way, this just indicates that it does require an application, and we follow the state statute for that. And then the last section, development agreements. As I got to reading through this, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it read. There was a lot better examples being used out in the world, in the planning world. So I just decided that it was better to delete it. I don't think it addressed what we want to accomplish with development agreements. So I took it out. So have some attorneys working on new language. So that's all we do. Holy smokes, got through the whole thing in one night.
You skipped all the red ones in the middle.
They didn't.
Any questions to staff before we move on?
Waiting for the deliberation.
Okay, Milton, thank you. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna move on to public comment. We're gonna do the online comments first. 3 minutes for your comment. Somebody has a timer most likely.
I do.
Thank you. The same as for the audience. 3 minutes, your spouse or friend can give you his or her 3 minutes. However, if you agree with the previous speaker, just say I agree with the speaker, and we need to stay on task here. Everybody wants their part to speak. So, but like I said, we don't need to be repeating things, okay? All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question. What we were handed out here, because I pulled off the staff report offline yesterday, and it's different from this one. It should not be.
Yeah, it was, so the staff
Other than the
report,
blue
yeah.
that I added. It's different than the staff report. The staff report just shows the red stuff that was changed.
What we went through was the whole document tonight.
Yeah, I printed out the staff report with my comments on it, but like on 12-624, there's a C on this one, but when I printed it off yesterday, there was not a C.
Yes, that's because C didn't change. You're talking in the road section, I bet?
There was no C in the road.
Yes, and that's because what was in the staff report was an attempt to only list the sections that changed. And C didn't change. I stumbled across the same thing. C did.
Sorry, I took over a project that was,
Oh, I know.
yeah. So I took over quite at the end, so.
So, Zoom?
Zoom first.
Yes, we're gonna do Zoom first and get that out of the way.
So if you have a comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. And Susan Drumheller, you're first.
Okay, thank you very much. My name's Susan Drumheller. I live in Sagal, Idaho, and I appreciate that you're trying to fix some of the problems with the subdivision ordinance. However, I think if you want to protect the quality of life of Bonner County and don't want to have a buyer beware environment here, we need to strive for more than rock bottom requirements established in state code. The creation of the minor land division process in 2016 created many of the problems that you're having to fix now. But I don't think the fixes go far enough. Instead, you're expanding the flawed minor land division category. We need to restore agency review to all subdivisions, all land divisions. Don't remove the cities and bring back the other agencies that are now excluded from the process. Please bring back legal notices for all land divisions and a public comment period. You may learn something about the property that changes the situation. The lack of public involvement, no legal notices, no agency review, and the fact that the subdivision standards now aren't going to apply basically to anything that's 10 lots or less. I mean, this just is, I don't know, it just increases the problems we're going to have. And if the intent is to encourage people to use the subdivision process, then I suggest you return the subdivision definition to any division of land over 4 lots. I've also noticed that on the planning department's website, you have a big disclaimer warning people that we live in a buyer beware county. And I think it's zoning code changes like what happened in 2016 and some of what we're seeing here, that's creating that environment. So I think there are too many problems here to fix right now. So I would recommend that basically you go back to the drawing board and deny this.
Thank you.
Christine Noella.
Hello? Hello?
Ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll just keep it brief. I agree with what Susan said. Pardon me?
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Christine Logue, Vista Tribe. I agree with what Susan had to say. She will put it down that it seems like just a little bit more. So let's keep it brief for this. Thank you. I was,
Yeah.
Try.
Speaker on.
Unfortunately, your connection's going in and out. We can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
There you go.
Okay, Kaylee, you're next.
Thank you. Kaylee Miller for the record. My address is 1376 Evergreen Road, Sandpoint, Idaho. I have a question and then also a couple of comments. My first question, I just wonder about the interpretation where you've said that any lots or parcels that are divided by a right-of-way, that's some sort of government action. I wondered how plats that were recorded through the county planning office that have a road or a right-of-way that currently divide them would be viewed, and if those would be considered individual resulting lots, even if they're less than the current zoning minimums based on that code section. So maybe Director Ollerton can address that. I also wanted to talk about the minor land division process just because I've had some discussions with Director Ollerton and Assistant Director Pilch, and I think there's a little bit of confusion in the language, and I wanted to see if there was an opportunity to clarify that. The first being in the minor land division section, we refer to the subdivision design standards for roads, and we reference those letters. And then we go on to add additional sections A, B, and C that say that we have to dedicate that right of way or easements, and that has to be created. But when we refer back to the subdivision road standards, they in themselves implicate that the construction will actually occur. And it's my understanding that it's the intention for the minor land division to not require that as part of the subdivision process for that construction to actually occur, but to allow that to happen after the fact. And so I would request that you strike the section that refers back to 12-624 and the letters that are followed there. I think each of those items are addressed by the additional language that is provided in the minor land division section. And then also under the minor land division section, design criteria 2A, where it says new or existing private roads and easements shall be a minimum of 40 feet wide within the bounds of the minor land division. That implies that the road itself, as well as the easement, has to be 40 feet in width. The language that was used for the public road standards that says that the road shall have a minimum of 60-foot wide right-of-way is much clearer. And I would request that the letter A be amended to reflect similar language where it states that new or existing private easements shall be a minimum of 40 feet in width within the bounds of the minor land division. I know that bounces around a lot, so if anybody has questions, I'm happy to try to clarify.
So one question, which section did you just talk about for the clarification on the easement width?
So in the minor land divisions, subchapter 6.4, and then it's letter D to A and B. A says that new or existing private roads and easements shall be a minimum of 40 feet wide, and that implies that both the road and the easement have to be that width. Where in the letter B, it says that new and existing public roads shall have a minimum right-of-way width, which is much clearer. So I would just request that A be reworded a little to say new or existing easements or access easements shall have a minimum width of 40 feet wide within the bounds. And I believe based on my discussions with planning staff that the intent was to make sure that we are creating easements and right of way that is proper width, but not necessarily to require the construction. So the other part of that was that 12-624 A, C, and D refer to the subdivision road standards. And by referring back to those, you're essentially requiring the construction to public road or private road standards dependent on the size. So I would request that you strike the reference to 12-624 A, C, and D from that same section. And I believe it was Commissioner Davis, and I apologize, I can't read your name tags on Zoom, that was referencing the connectivity language that was also included in that 12-624. And I think that that's what you're trying to address with letter C in this section.
Kaylee, you're out of time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. And Asia, you're next.
Asia Williams, 297 Covered Bridge Loop in Blanchard, Idaho. I don't
You
agree.
speak up, please, Asia.
Yep, can you hear me better now?
No,
How's this?
that's a little better.
All right, I oppose the elimination of the public hearings for subdivisions, and I agree with the Kootenai City comment that subdivision should be heard by elected and appointed officials. And then Susan did a very good job explaining some of the issues that a lot of people have expressed, and I just want to stress the division of land. I would rather it be 4 than 10, because I think that her comment about we would be really pushing people to do the process for subdivisions is accurate if we drop that down to 4 from 10. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Christine, did you want to try to give her a chance again? Okay.
See.
Christine, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
You're still cutting out, but
Can you hear me?
go ahead and try it.
Okay, let me go. Let me go step outside. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to also reiterate that what Susan said. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to also second basically what Susan said. I felt that she put it down pretty well, on point, exactly my feelings. So I don't want to take up the rest of the evening. I too oppose the number of lots that's put in the short plat going into the minor land division definition. So I won't make it long. I do appreciate your time. Talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you.
And that's it for Zoom.
Okay, Mr. Linscott.
Oh, wait. We have one more. If you're on Zoom and you have a comment, please raise your hand and be ready to speak. Reg, you're good.
I would like to give my time to Kaylee if she wants more time. If not, I'll go ahead. If she raises her hand, let me know.
Haley's already had her time.
I thought we could give time to our time to other people.
No, if she would have continued, she would have continued it if she would have.
Okay, I'll go ahead and comment because there's a lot going on here, and I'm concerned with how the changes concentrate the decision about subdivisions to a very few. They take from the public's ability to be informed and included when legal notices aren't required, and when the requirements for public hearings are lessened or removed. They take from the cities when they remove the area city impact comment period for subdivisions of 10 or fewer lots. And it actually sounds like it reneges on the current ACI agreements. If 10 or 15% of the county subdivisions were being made by ACIs, wouldn't the county expect the right to comment on those? The changes also take from the Planning and Zoning Commission by allowing administrative approval for these divisions up to 10 lots. When the appeals allow commissioners to make decisions without considering the P&Z recommendations, as in the de novo hearings, we're running into that. And to note, as we've seen in the Valiant Trestle Creek case, where there was a parking lot expanded after the P&Z hearing, and in the current Dom Spirit Lake rezone, where the commissioners are allowing applicants to make changes after P&Z review, we're already experiencing this diminished P&Z value here. And I object to the P&Z or the PhD not being included in reviewing the subdivisions. I know that GIS layers for topography, soils, wetlands, they're just no substitute for boots on the ground or professional health district review when there can be 2.5 acre lots needing a drain field. And I don't know what reassures the public that removal of the public hearings, the removal of the ACI comments, the removal of the Panhandle Health District, and the diminishing the role of the P&Z, what will this do to protect the rural character that the community and Bonner County citizens have repeatedly said that they value as a priority? These changes put too much in the hands of the planning staff and the elected officials, the 3 elected officials, and I feel this needs to be tabled to be further addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reg, can you state your name for the record?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Regina Crawford, 236 Larson Ranch Lane.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lynn Scott. You're up.
I'm gonna come over here so you can hear me a little bit better. And I don't know if Milton could see with the computer,
I
perhaps.
will do my magic.
Pardon?
Yeah.
I didn't know, did you get?
Name and address.
Oh, Matt Lynn Scott, 429 West Frank Creek Road, Sago, Idaho. They didn't get that? Okay. Regarding 12-6.
Can I say one more thing? If you're gonna be more than 3, does your brother want to give you your 3 minutes?
Sure. I don't think I'll be that long. I don't know if Milton can pull up 12-612 C7. It's regarding the 2-year holding period if you're granted a piece of property and exempt from the family split. And I think, as Milton touched on, I don't know why we need to have a 2-year holding period on that. They're only allowed 1 in their lifetime in Bonner County. And now, in addition to that, they're going to be subject to some of these other criteria. So I don't know why we necessarily need to have that. I'm glad we've gone ahead and eliminated the rest of the portion where it says, for any remaining parcel which is legal access is not less than 10 acres, the 2-year holding period shall not apply. What that says is that the grantor, if you go ahead and have a 10-acre piece and you grant 5 acres to your son, the way it read before is that both parcels have to be retained for 2 years. Otherwise, it's going to have to trigger a planning procedure. So I'm really glad we're getting rid of that. But I also believe it's going to be fine if we go ahead and eliminate that 2-year holding period on that family split, because again, they're only allowed once in a lifetime. The second thing is regarding 612D. It's regarding the tax segregation notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you guys read that on number 3, it says the legal to be recorded shall have language clearly stating the purpose of the document is for financial purposes and does not constitute a legal lot or parcel on its own. I know we have a couple of people here who are familiar with that. If that was to appear on the deed of trust, it's a huge red flag. There will not be any loan on that. There will be none. My suggestion is, I don't know if it has to be massaged a little bit or eliminated. I understand.
So this part right here?
Yes.
So, did you read that tax segregation for?
I read it, but it also says that the legal to be recorded, which would be the deed of trust, Exhibit A on the deed of trust legal description, shall have the language stating the purpose of the document is for financial purposes and does not. So if that language is on there, I talked to 2 different lenders and they both said no. There's no way an underwriter is going to get past underwriting on that. So I don't know if that could be massaged or eliminated. Let me see here.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Okay. I am really glad on 12-624D to allow the exception to include all districts and zones. not just a commercial, industrial, and resource. Yeah, not just a commercial, industrial, or rural service center. Because there's gonna be many times that we're gonna have some, you guys are gonna have some minor land divisions come up in front of you, and you may have only 2 parcels. And in order to go ahead and make those have a public right of way, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you have 1 parcel in there that's less than 5 acres, then you're gonna have the whole plat, if you will, would have to have that frontage. And then the last thing is on 12-640 minor land divisions. I still do not like that language. I just want to confirm that Bonner County cannot mandate the granting of an easement to a neighboring parcel where one does not already exist in exchange or as a condition for a minor land division approval. I still have a problem with that. We discussed it in the workshops. I understand if you own the adjoining land, that's fine. But if I have a 10-acre piece and I want to go ahead and put it into 2 5s, now all of a sudden that's going to trigger this, where I have to go ahead and possibly allow for continuity to surrounding neighbors. If it's just 2 parcels, it's not even a roadway. It's called a driveway according to our Bonner County Code. And so we don't have any design standards for driveways. However, if you go ahead and mandate that is continuity for a neighbor piece of property, there's a chance you have to go ahead and improve that to a county standard when that's not the intent to begin.
Along with an easement to that other property.
Along with an easement to the other property.
What if the language said, all roads shall be designed to allow for future connectivity to surrounding lands and roads consistent with the county transportation plan? So at least there's a standard of review and there's a plan for it, right?
Right. I think that sounds a lot better.
Bonner County Road and Bridge considers so many of those to be shared easement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you get between 2 agencies in a way, and we need to clarify that somewhat, I think, because some of these driveways, several people use the same driveway, shared driveway. You and I look at it as an easement. Yeah.
And the last thing is, obviously we all know that a minor land division is not a subdivision. And as was discussed back in September of 2016 in your guys' meetings, and I have the minutes here someplace. It was determined from Bill Wilson that a minor land division cannot be called a plat. And so I'm pretty positive that this document is fine from what I can tell. But sometimes we always reference a lot as being part of a subdivision, a parcel as being part of either a minor land division or a family split. But we cannot refer to a minor land division parcel as a plat, at least according to the minutes back in 2016. Am I done?
It's an interesting thought. I don't know that I agree with that because the plat meets all of the standards of state law. So technically it is a plat because it does meet all of the standards.
Yeah.
Reviewed by the county surveyors.
Yeah.
It's approved by the board. No, I get it. Oh. I understand.
Okay. But other than that, I think, I really want to thank Milton. I made a lot of comments kind of last minute, and I'm really glad that he listened to me and went back and forth, and I really appreciate that, Milton. And thank you guys.
Did he use my 3 minutes?
He did. And your next 3 minutes next month. Marcia Shepherd.
I'm sorry?
Marcia Shepherd.
My name is Marcia Stevens. I live at
Oh,
140.
Stevens, I'm sorry.
That's
Can you
okay.
Come up and speak a little closer, and your name and address for the record, please.
Marcia Stevens, 149 Pine Grove, Spirit Lake. Mine is regard to the notification process, and I agree with Susan. Is that her name? Who was articulating that. So I'm in agreement that number one, it should be for or more. My other concern is regarding the notification within, if I understand this right, 300 feet of a property line. That's where you notify the neighbors. I think that that's not sufficient because we have impacts, a lot of impacts in our organization. And I would like to offer a possible solution to that. Something that we did in 2 lifetimes ago where I used to live is required a notification, a land use action notification. It was a big board, public notice on the property, visible on the street to the public. As they drove by, they could see land use action, what was going on, and that is the opportunity for them to provide comments if you still are objecting to holding public, public hearings, that you could give people opportunity to see that, stop, look it up, read it if they care to, and then offer their comments that way. And it's just a public, it's like, real estate post in a big, huge whiteboard that had that with the plat number or whatever and what was going to happen. Look it up. And then people can comment as they saw fit for, impact. And that might be a solution to the issue. Thank you very much.
Carmen?
I'm Carmen Corey-Toro, and I live at 88 Oxford and Priest River. And I actually am partly confused because I understand, like when you were explaining about if we make the minor land division 10, then they're not going to try to sneak in, divide 80 into 20, so that's 4, and then do 4 more later, so you end up with way more. I get that. Is there a way without scaring all of us with changing it to 10 to trigger something anytime a person, for family or not, divides a piece of land? So then if a week or a month or a year later, they decide to make it 4 more, then, to go down to 5, then that triggers something. Go, wait a minute, you already divided this. Now you're just being a developer who's trying to take advantage of the situation. So, because I think most of us are just, I don't have a problem if I had 600 acres divide, and I had 10 children divided by my kids, and then later they'll sell it or whatever. But I do have a problem if I see somebody going and buying 600 acres, getting the minimum or what they can get away with legally without triggering anything, and then coming and adding more. So next thing we know, we have 600 houses, and then that really messes with the environment. So that was if there was a way when anybody, I don't care who, as soon as they go and divide a whole bunch of stuff up or change lines or whatever, it triggers something because it's a computer system. It should be able to go, so-and-so did something. So then the next time they try, you look at what they did to see, are they really out to hurt the environment or not being the best of the community who's lived there? Because I think we should be working to not make the person happy who's moving in and go, let's give them all these gifts, but really try to maintain the life we have here, and that's my biggest worry. And then I saw that, because I know you were saying stuff about transfer side and EMS side, so then it would help the county if they got, 10 instead of 4. But I think people would take advantage of that. It wouldn't be the county taking, it'd be somebody else. And then the other stuff he mentioned, so I'm going back. And then there was a whole bunch of, hold on, I circled a whole bunch of things, but there were many pages missed. Is that because, that's okay. In the, after the zoning, right, starting on page 25, so 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, I mean, there were a whole bunch of red that were crossed out. And is that because those were somewhere else that they were already? Yeah. Or because that just makes, because a lot of that kind of made it sound not interested in letting the public know. And I just worry about developers going in, because if one person wants to live on 600 acres because they don't like people, I'm okay with that.
We're out of
So,
time, yeah. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Okay, thank you. David, Gunner, Gunther?
Getting. County Clerk Ireland. My name is Dave Ginning. My address is 2270 Hoodoo Mountain Road, Priest River. I totally agree with what you said about posting a large sign on any possible zoning coming up on property. We did that back in my home state of Illinois, and it was very helpful for everyone. Transparency is very important, especially this day and age. And I think by doing that, and by the way, the planning committee is doing an unbelievably exceptional job, given the task at hand with people trying to sneak things and build a lot out of a little when they shouldn't be doing it. And most of us here appreciate what you do. And I think it's very important to be transparent. So I agree with Susan on Zoom, on everything she said. She kind of took everything that I was going to say and ran with it. So there's no sense in beating it again.
All right, thank you, sir. Brian Donkey?
Yes. Brian Donkey, 754 Horton Mountain Road, Fish River. I also concur with all the statements made by Susan with regard to the concerns. I'd like to expand on two of the items that were addressed. The notification process, the 300 feet, right, from the state's perspective is a minimum, not a requirement as far as a maximum. When we think about rural communities and the lot sizes in our rural communities, 300 feet means only direct contiguous lots will be notified. Also, when we think about rural communities, and we know this, you know this from your prior hearings, and all of us that have also been serving on subcommittees know, based on comments, that how many people in our community either don't have internet at their home, they don't make it into town to look at postings very often, or even receive a newspaper. So direct mailings are critical to communicating appropriately with those that are going to be most likely impacted by these proposed changes. So rural communities, neighborhoods are not measured in feet, they're measured in miles. And so I'm not going to suggest that I know what the right number is, but it's a whole lot more than 300 feet. So please seriously consider that factor as you're deliberating. The other thing I'd like to expand on, and Milton, I'll speak to numerous meetings we've had for our sub-area committee. The concept of primarily transferring the responsibility to staff to review checklists means that we're requiring staff to rely on map data. I think all of you probably know how inaccurate map data is, especially in rural areas. And so that's where this public comment period, especially the hearings, is so important to allow people time to realize these things are happening and come and offer direct, as someone put it, boots on the ground feedback to talk about factors that don't show up on the maps or when the maps are utterly inaccurate. And so we really need to have that community level knowledge, share it to understand what the reality of the impacts are likely to be for those full considerations to be taken. And it might require staff going out and performing on-site inspections to verify conditions instead of simply assuming what's been stated in an application. You know, I can speak to recent applications you've been reviewing where some of the comments are utterly false. And so those things may not be obvious to the staff. And I think it would be inappropriate to put the burden solely on the staff to be able to make those decisions accurately. So I think it's critical that we continue to have both the public comment period through proper notification as well as these public hearings.
Thank you. Catherine?
Catherine Colberg, I'm with the Panhandle Health District, but I do live in Sandpoint here, but today I'm speaking on behalf of Panhandle Health. I guess I would like to thank you all for coming and being interested in this topic, first of all. As we all know, Bonner County is in the midst of tremendous growth right now. Panhandle Health is handling more than twice the septic applications we were handling last year. Just from 2019 to 2020, we saw a 10% increase in our septic permits that were issued. We issued approximately 715 septic permits in Bonner County last year. We did over 1,300 inspections of property. Sometimes people just do the inspection, they don't actually get a permit. In Idaho, septic systems are based on, and permitted based in design, based on wastewater flows coming out of structure. And the way that that is assessed in Idaho is based on the IDAPA 580103, the subsurface sewage rules. The established flows are based on the number of bedrooms in a specific dwelling. So for example, one 3-bedroom dwelling would be permitted and designed as 250 gallons per day. So if you think of 715 septic permits we issued last year times 250, some of those permits were greater than 3 bedrooms, some were less, but just for the sake of conversation, that's almost 180,000 gallons of wastewater that we issued permits to discharge legally into our environment. That's in places where we've assessed the site can handle it. This wastewater is something, it's in addition to all of the existing wastewater flows we've already got in our county. And I'm expecting more than that this year. We're already almost 3 times as many applications since January as we've ever had in the time I've been here, which is 11 years till to today. So we are on the upward trend right now. Septic systems are intended to adequately store and then treat your wastewater so that the final outcome is that you're discharging water that does not have pathogens, it doesn't have contaminants into our groundwater supply, surface water. It eventually makes its way to our state waters. But the intent of the septic system, if it's placed properly and functioning properly, is to reduce the pathogens and to provide clean water into our environment. The services and utilities section under the subdivision indicated specific requirements for other utilities and services. And then as someone alluded to earlier, the change that was made in the past indicates a disposal method for all building sites as approved by PhD or the state of Idaho may be provided. Just to clarify, everybody in Idaho is required to discharge all of their wastewater to an approved location. Any plumbing, any structure, is that my time already?
I'll yield my time.
You can have mine.
Any structure is required to treat their wastewater and go into an approved spot. So the bay is a little confusing. PhD does strive to collaborate and communicate with people. The sooner we're involved in a planning process, the better. We have been showing up on site since the minor land division was created and finding that people have already split the parcel, already got their dwelling up, and then we show up. And the most suitable place for septic has a road in it or a well in it or a driveway. Unfortunately, we are bound by the state sewage rules. We can't deviate from that. So if they have compromised their own spot that's suitable for septic, we can't do anything about it. We can't issue a permit unless it's compliant. So what people end up doing is getting an easement onto an adjacent parcel if possible. Or maybe there'll be some smaller spot that they can spend a lot more money and do a more complex engineered type of system. We would prefer to get out there at the beginning of the process to ensure they get the cheapest septic system possible for them and the best placed septic system to ensure long-term functionality, and they can retain their property values, and we can also prevent contamination of the water wells, drinking water, surface water, whatever. Maintain the high quality of life we have. The idea of subdivide or doing a minor land division up to 10 lots without PhD assessing that at all means that there will be lots created, no doubt, that are not going to be suitable for septic because no one has assessed them. So, what happens when someone buys that property sight unseen, or they buy the property only coming from a municipal area in the past? They really have no idea how a septic system functions. This is when problems get created. So planning is the big thing Panhandle Health would like to be involved with so that we can help move these people forward, find solutions that are cheap for them, allow them to utilize their land as best as possible, and provide a long-term functioning septic system. If we're gonna have 180,000 gallons of wastewater a year moving forward, we've got to be planning for this. I mean, that's just for septic systems, not including the municipal wastewater. So I would just ask that we consider this a little further and consider involving PhD a little bit more, because wastewater is a huge issue as population density and populations as a whole go up. So that is all I've got. Thank you for the time.
Mr. Chairman,
Can we ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, sure.
So if I hear you correctly, the two issues you have with this current plan is one, maybe taking out the language that says may, because it is a state law already, and referencing.
We've kind of gone around, and to me, it's a little deceptive to a potential buyer, thinking that they have an option when really they are required by the state law to have an approved discharge for their wastewater. So how the county wants to take that, I mean, it's either switch it to a shall or doing something. I mean, you could leave it a may if you want, but if I was a buyer and saw that, I don't think I would understand what that means.
That makes sense. My second clarification would be within the Panhandle Health District's opinion, you should be required to get your sign off prior to building location permit on a minor.
Well, there's a couple things. We would prefer to be reviewing building location permits before they're issued. That's a separate issue, separate from this discussion kind of. We are showing up on properties that have been totally compromised, and they could have easily prevented the problems. And we show up like exactly what I just said, where the house is in the perfect spot for septic. You know, I mean, so that building location issue is one thing. What Panhandle Health, I would say, is most concerned about with what we're discussing today is the fact that a subdivision, when it comes through Panhandle Health, we physically go in the field and look at 8-foot deep test holes to see what the soil is, where's the groundwater, what's going on here. If we see that someone really, the best bet is to move their property lines, then maybe they still can do what they wanted in terms of numbers of lots, but they need to shift where the property lines are to ensure each lot has a suitable location for wastewater disposal. That's ideal to us. What's happening right now is that people look on paper and see what, you know, looks good on paper, make the lots, and potentially even build a structure, like I said. But either way, Panhandle Health hasn't been in the equation through any of that. Now we come out and 3/4 of a lot is maybe submerged or whatever, you know, it's a wetland. And even aside from the environmental regulatory aspect of it, from a functionality standpoint, if you try to put a septic system into saturated soils like wetlands, it won't work. And these people will have their sewage coming into their house every spring, maybe all year. So, you know, there's a reason for the subsurface sewage rules, which is to protect the waters of the state and promote a positive environment that we all, you know, we all live here for a reason. But the other thing is just a functionality aspect and protecting the property value. You don't want to spend $500,000 for a house and have a failing septic system every spring. I deal with those people every year. So what we would prefer to see is have some involvement before lots are created in order to ensure they're assessed for their actual capabilities, and then to plan accordingly so the lot lines end up in good places and everyone has a good wastewater disposal.
So we'll just change B. I guess it's, yeah, B. And I think that's the wording that was there before. Is that correct?
That's down, this is the verbiage that was down on the.
Oh, okay. So, but
that is more appropriate language.
yeah, a plat or a minor land division would in these days get a sanitary restriction saying you've got to have a PhD permit before you can. Or do you want to go all the way because the lift says, okay, I think that says it's already approved for septic.
The lift, if we are the only ones that have authority right now to lift it, so if we lift it, we would have already gone out and assessed it and ensured that. But if you're including the sanitary restriction, that is leaving sanitary restrictions in place, but then a BLP is issued before we've come out, now that seems to not function very well. But if you're leaving it in place and then PhD is contacted and we have to issue a permit before a BLP is issued, then that would work. If that makes sense.
All the way back to the old days, you had to have approval of a septic location from PhD.
It's a basic
in order to
utility,
get
right?
divided
I mean,
So my question is does Panhandle, when they meet with the board on monthly or quarterly, does Panhandle help tell the board these stories and these situations and try to negotiate that with the board? Because that's where this direction comes from. And that's why we are where we are. And so if you want to build that relationship, I think Panhandle Health needs to work with the board to build that.
which board? The
Board of County Commissioners.
Oh.
And along with that, you know, a lot of discussions been undertaken over the last 5 years on this subject of using them, and it's not always going well. Part of that was when Panhandle put what I would call responsible fees on the reviews, and that bothered people because it went from nothing to a little bit. And also the time involved to get that review and approval. So has the district, I think the fees are still the same for inspection, but are there more personnel now? So what's the time frame for?
When you've got the workload like we have right now, it's gonna be impossible. We are totally understaffed. The spike in our 10% more from last year, it's almost impossible to hire highly qualified people in that time frame and everything else. But what I will say, I understand the reason for the MLD and the desire to expedite the process. But if you end up in a compromised situation because you've ruined your site and now you're in a more complicated process, you haven't done anything. So
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I certainly, we have always strived to, I mean, we're punching out the numbers. We are doing a ton of work. So, I mean, certainly I can't commit to any specific time frame when you've got workload going up. But I guess it's just what I'm saying about the eventual outcome of the property. Everyone wants it to be functional and long lasting. So
Yeah.
if you're not going to plan the wastewater as part of that on the beginning, well, it's going to come into the equation at some point. It's just at how smooth is it going to be?
And you're right, there's people coming in who have no clue that that's necessary.
I mean, that's where, from our, we talk to these people all the time, and that's where I feel sorry for people constantly. I mean, I'm constantly apologizing for the fact that unfortunately they didn't understand how a septic system works.
It's not just septic. So first, I appreciate your coming tonight and sharing that with us.
I know too, I'm sorry, Suzanne will know also the lenders are now requiring us to
There's one on our road.
things to measure distances between the septic and the well. And they want those locations at times on that site map. So, you know, we have to meet those regulations, and sometimes we come across these properties where, just like you've said, people have bought, they have no idea. They can tell you where the well is, and absolutely. And sometimes we will go to Panhandle Health or through the state if we can to try to find if that's been reported anywhere where they put that septic system. So that can really hold up a property from closing because an underwriter's not going to take it.
Thomas Lewis.
I'm gonna pass.
Okay. I'll butcher this last, Bill Bathford.
That's I. My name's Bill Babdorf. I'm from 354 Bearing Tree Lane, close to Spirit Lake, Dr. Flagstone.
Sure, did you give up your minutes to Panhandle Health?
That was my way.
Oh.
She did. First of all, I agree totally with Susan Drumheller and Regina. I think they both hit all of the situations right on the head. But I would like to also follow up by saying thank you for trying to fix this and for reviewing and trying to make it better. The only issue I really have is a lot of it appears to be geared more towards developers and getting them in here and getting them situated as opposed to just regular people that want to divide up their land. Point of, or the The one thing that stands out in my mind is Dom construction on Spirit Lake Cutoff Road. You guys did an exemplary job, I believe, in disallowing that. The commissioners have since taken a look at it. And I can tell you right now, 2 of them are going to vote for it and one's going to vote against it. And that'll be probably April 14th. They're kicking the can down the road, basically because one of the commissioners decided rather than just have the 10-acre lots like it should be, they think that one side should be 10 acre, the other side should be 5. And which is, I mean, why they want to do that is frankly quite beyond me. The problem with that is, again, Dom Construction is going to be the one that actually gets something for their money. And really that land was actually given to them by the farmer that owns all the hay across the road. So I guess I'm a little concerned about what I'm seeing. I really don't want to see this turn into a Rathdrum here. People move here just because of the lifestyle that's here. And I know that's maybe emotional to you, but it's the reason why we're here. And if I wanted to live out in the prairie, I would, I could, but I don't want to do that. I like the trees here. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. But I guarantee you, all the work that you guys put into that, it's going to get, it'll get a submarine. And the one gentleman that is definitely going to vote for it kind of made a comment that he's afraid that the county might get sued. What he doesn't seem to realize is we have that same ability. So it's either Dom Construction's going to sue you or the people of Bonner County is going to sue you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Trevest?
Yes. Hi, good evening. I'm David Trevest. And my hearing's not the best because I'm getting old. We live at 1701 Edgemere Cutoff, my wife and I, and we have the alpaca farm there. We have been here 7 years and worked really well with Milton and appreciate all the work that the department's doing and the subcommittees. And we agree with Brian Domke, Susan. I'm really opposed. I was a commissioner in my old days. I know what the commissioners are feeling, but I don't agree with what the county commissioners are doing with your decisions. And they're playing real politics with good decisions. I sat through your hearings on Dom. I agree with you 100%. And I also have talked to Milton. Parceling in the beginning in the MAP Act was 4 parcels. It was never intended to go to 10 parcels. It was never intended to go to 11 parcels. So I really would like to see us keep the 4 parcels under the MAP Act as it's been for generations and adopted, and let everything else become a track. Make them put in a road or put in the right septic systems to comply with what the Panhandle Health is saying. And thank you for coming, and I hope you come to the commissioner's hearing because we're going to pack the place on the 14th. Thanks, Milton.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment. Go back to Milton for.
Is there anybody else that's not on the list?
No, we've covered everybody on the list.
No.
Well, no.
Anybody else? You didn't sign the list, I'm sorry. Anybody else would like to comment? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Another hand up online.
Sherry Clipson from 95 Mary Lane, Old Town, Idaho. I'm a real estate broker and a long time resident. You guys are doing an absolutely fabulous job, and all of you have come. I really appreciate the public input. I agree with keeping the splits to 4 lots or smaller, not going to 10. I agree with what Susan said, Regina, what Brian Domke said. I love what the sign lady said because I don't get the newspaper. I would love to see something posted on anything that's going to be developed. That's pretty simple, not very expensive. It's very doable. I Other than that, I think a lot of the little things have been addressed. Panhandle Health has got a really important part in this. And as a real estate broker, one of the big problems I've seen is that people that are not familiar with rural living come to the area, they get absolutely no guidance on how to develop their land, and they go, oh, we're going to build the house. And so, as a real estate broker, I do advise people, which steps they need to follow. But that's a problem that I don't see an easy fix for. But, I can share with, my other colleagues that is a really important step in any of these. But we also have the developers who just go, let's get as many lots as possible. And as you suggested, they need to know, they need to have someone come and help them figure out, well, here's a wetland. We can't do it there, make that open space or, so it's a big problem, but I really think that keeping it to the 4 lots or less for the minor subdivisions is the way that we should keep that. And the public hearings are really, really important. And I think we should always have those. Thank you.
We have one more comment online too, Brian. Okay. Teresa Heisner, you can speak.
Teresa Heisner, P.O. Box 2004, Priest River, Idaho. I would just like to comment, and we've discussed this in our sub area about the 300-foot, how do you say it, advisory for the surrounding parcels. I don't think that's enough area considering the rural nature of our neighborhoods, and especially for all the roads that surround these parcels. I mean, it's going to affect a lot of people. And it doesn't matter where you are in the county. So I'd really like the planning department to take that into consideration. And I do agree with Brian and Susan and Panhandle Health on many of the subjects they address. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everybody's done here with comments? Okay. Milt, you can go ahead with any rebuttal if you have any.
Not really. The intent of the changes and the intent of the minor land division was to make it easier for property owners to divide their property, and it has. It's just because of those missed loopholes, developers have come in and taken advantage of some of that. And that's one of the things we're trying to stop. But the MLD process did actually help private property owners split their property. It has been a good process. It's not an overwhelming process. It's a process that a property owner can hire a surveyor and go and do. To add in the road requirements adds in engineering costs and then road building and there's a lot more expense and it was difficult for property owners to divide their property. So the thing we're trying to fix is the fact that there have been some developers take advantage of it. So 4 versus 10, commissioners, I'll leave that to you to discuss the public hearing process. Again, I'm just presenting what state code requires, and again, up to you how you choose to follow that or not. I did catch this language. I appreciate the comment that this language was perhaps a little confusing. All plats shall include the sanitary restriction and the sanitary restriction width. I think that addresses it. You did notice that this language was in black. That means it's been there since 2008. So that's not language that was put in or was new. So there were a couple other points that I highlighted. We can talk about them as we go through the document through deliberation if you want. I'm going to make one more plug. I encourage Panhandle Health to discuss this with the board.
And we'll keep that to heart and do my best.
Okay, so I'm going to close public hearing and once comments and go to commissioners' deliberations. And we don't finish tonight, and we'll have to continue, obviously.
But don't, we only have 2 days.
But we have to do something special, yeah, so we should be able to go through and get the high points that we need to talk about.
No, in a different setting, you had addressed a 300-foot noticing. And I understood, my interpretation was that's just standard for what Bonner County has. And it was brought up tonight that on the state level, that's a minimum. Could you briefly address that?
That's correct. The 300 feet is in state law for the noticing requirement for these types of, well, for land use files, it's in the zone, it's in the public hearing process.
But that's a minimum.
That's the minimum, 300 feet, that's correct. And again, I am a rural planner, I'm not an urban planner, and absolutely, 300 feet is not very big. It usually hits one property around the property that's being affected. It's not very big.
So we discussed the 300-foot. My tenure here for 7 or 8 years, it comes up, we kind of kick that down the road because there is cost, obviously, and it's going to have to be passed on in fees to somebody. It's not fair to the taxpayers. And the small signage to, what are they, 12 by 18 or whatever is always there. We don't see the signs, we don't see the signs all the time. Maybe we need to expand those signs to a realtor.
Well,
size
again,
sign or something. That's
in the urban areas, the way that that's done is that the county or the cities don't post those. The applicant's required to pay for that sign and put that sign up.
Yeah.
So it's not the county having to do it, it's the applicant.
Well,
So the cost is already.
So if we gotta build a bigger sign, it's a bigger sign.
Yeah, that's correct.
Get like a 4 by 8. That way we can all see it.
So this is our
That's
time.
enough sign.
And I think we've all seen in various settings, signs that are announcing something on a property, whether it's potential division, development, condos are coming, whatever, the bank's coming, and so forth. And usually, just add a 4 by 8 sheet of plywood painted over by the sign company in town. It's a little confusing because, again, that's only visible by somebody who takes it down the road and sees it. If you're a quarter mile away, you never go down that road or whatever, you're never going to see it. So you make a valid claim. I didn't know about this. So where is it? We've discussed it many times. There's no absolute of advertising in action. Legally, yep, put it in the paper. There's some of us nuts that read that every day. Most people don't even know where it is or that it's there, or get the paper. The website for the county is pretty accessible. You can say what's on there. But again, not everybody has access to it. So I don't know that there's any one size fits all type of notice for sure. That by definition, there isn't. No.
Well, but even further, we're required to notice based on the assessor's address.
Right.
For tax purposes, and
be a bank in Cincinnati.
We were just talking today that as we were putting these together for other applications, that there's a lot of these that they're not local. We're sending these notices out of the area.
Well, and it's based on assessor's record.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I don't know if they live there or not. It goes to where they get their taxes.
Yeah, which could be a bank as well, or a lending institution, Dubai or something.
Probably not.
So I think it could be better than what it is. The little yellow placard gets posted on a piece of lath, and the first rainstorm comes a Frito, all curled up, you can't see it or read it, or gets knocked down or whatever. So probably we could figure out something to be better.
I think we can do better on that for all files. Just
yes, right. Any land use action.
I wrote them.
I still think we have to cure the notice of these things, whether it is simply for an up to 4 minor land division, as an L in code, a short plat from 4 to 10, 5 to 10, and then a subdivision beyond that. As well as other land use. We're talking subdivisions tonight, but the other land use actions that you need to notice. But, okay, to reach the subject now of 4 to 10.
But, so while we're on the noticing, could we agree to look at something long greater than 300 feet?
Yeah, so a 10-acre lot is what, 600 by 800, something like that?
Or 330 by 660. So it could be.
So 1,000 feet, 1,000 feet enough? But when you're in a 10-acre zone,
Taylor said a quarter mile.
Could be better. I mean, that would take more for sure.
To me, that's reasonable and
But the other thing that you have to consider before you make this decision is, if it hits 200, the mailings don't go out.
meaning.
We post it in the paper only.
so yeah, you do
200
1,000
property
feet
owners.
in a suburban zone.
Is that's also under county code at present.
It is.
Is it possible, so that's an interesting point, is it possible that that notification distance could vary based on the zone? So that if you were in a suburban zone, I mean, I don't think we need to notice to a quarter mile in a suburban zone, but in a rural or ag forest zone.
We could end up with a notification table. The table. But
It's more complex, but I also think it's important that people get notice.
and if another section of county code needs to be changed to get around that 300 feet, so, you know, that's
You
good.
just have to consider it.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
But right now, sure.
Yeah, with our rural areas, we need a bigger
Yeah,
posting
greater
area.
area.
Yes, a bigger notification area, because we've got some large acreage farms and timberland, things like that. So the neighborhood is bigger, expanding. That's what's in town.
Mile radius.
I know.
A mile radius. I gotta remind you, it used to be in the county code a 1 mile radius around the property.
Well, it's Milton's typing. I remember when we took PhD out of the planning process, and a lot of that was cost, which I didn't think the cost was that high. But it was getting the paperwork back to the applicant on time so they could move forward. So it's a personnel problem, I understand.
If we slow down some of this growth, is that such a bad thing? If we need 800 houses in a quarter? If in fact they are being built appropriately and accordingly and not having to come back and fix things afterwards, isn't it better to look at things in the beginning, even if it takes a little bit longer, but it's being done correctly in the beginning and not fixing problems later?
And I'm sure PhD could say that people who are respecting due diligence are doing okay or doing better. Because they're going there first. They realize, oh, we need a septic permit. And we've discussed it too, just even to say, we talked about a brochure that's handed out. Somebody mentioned tonight, when somebody comes in, they have no idea what to do. All right, well, here's a little crib sheet that tells you, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. We handed it. And is that hearing that that's helping, or is it people are just, oh, well, it's on a piece of paper there?
No, it's on our website, and we had it.
Yeah, I've seen
It has all the contact information.
Yeah.
You know, if the contractor builds the house before he establishes water and sewer, that's on him. Those are the first two things you do.
It's the same with the setbacks. I mean, we find properties all the time that if somebody's already started a structure that's inside the setback.
How many variances have we heard in the last 5 years where the owner says, we live elsewhere, we weren't there watching the contract, why should we? The contractor's hired to do it right, we show up and he's done it wrong. So that puts the owner in a pickle, because then the owner has to come in and apply for variance, not the builder. And that's a shame. But
We're definitely stepping up our enforcement.
Yeah, and that's a part of it, but it's still, how can we get it totally upfront, so everybody knows going on what the rules are, which you can state them, you still have to follow them.
And post-construction, it's being financed at all. That's something that your lender's gonna ask first.
Absolutely.
You know, your water, your septic, your road, easements, but that's very important. And a lot of those lenders now want a diagram. You know, they want.
Keep that risk as low as possible.
It's important. They're financing it.
Yep, it is. It's the financing and the insurance and title that are pushing a lot of this oversight that has been taken out of these groups.
Milton, and I may have missed it, didn't understand, and you can help me. Was there a wording in there about describing a 1 acre piece? I should have written it down, and I wrote the number down wrong. Under one portion of that, it talks about describing, I think, a 1 acre piece of a property.
It may have been on that legal, that tax segregation thing, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't
For lending
understand the intent of that.
Well, the tax segregation, in order to finance the property. I don't know. I don't know if it said 1 acre, but the intent of this is that they can divide off a 1 acre parcel or a smaller parcel for financing.
Yeah, and typically, a lender's not gonna let you do that.
And I don't know how often this gets done, a couple times a year, 10 times a year, I don't know. But it does get asked because they won't loan on a 10 acre parcel with the house on it. That's the stories we get.
No,
So-
they will.
It will.
They will, in fact, as an appraiser, legally, ethically, I couldn't go out and value
I'm
the
happy to
house
delete
on
that
one.
whole section.
Yeah. And
You
they-
say over.
Yeah, they wouldn't fight, the lender's gonna go back and say, no, we want that whole thing, and it has to be described, blah, blah, blah. The county does, of course, the assessor's office holds that 1 acre and values it differently than the rest. If you've got 10 acres, you're gonna take 1 acre out, and that's the home site and value it, then the rest of it is valued differently. For a lender, they don't care about that, they want that whole thing. And if there is a different legal description, that's gonna throw it, an underwriter will throw it out.
Is that separate from when a person applies for a forest exemption or an ag exemption? You have to have a 1 acre house lot and then at least
Yeah,
5
that's
acres
separate
of.
from that. This is only for financing purposes. And again, the black is what was already in the code.
Right. Yeah, well,
This is what's been in there. And so this process has been in place. We just wanted to clarify it because people come in and say, hey, we want this.
And
Maybe when that was written, it was the banks were doing that. Now the banks aren't doing that because they've tightened their bill.
So what happens is that you'll end up to 40 acres. Once you hit 40 acres and above, then you're dealing with agricultural products, which are outside of your standard mainstream for banking and for lending. And so when you have a house that's sitting on 41 acres, 60 acres, 80 acres, they say, no, I'm sorry, you're outside of our criteria. You need to go find an agricultural lender. They say, well, we're in farming, we're doing with it. You're outside of our parameters. You write something in there that says, oh, we're gonna temporarily do this so that we can get this through on lending. Your underwriter's gonna look at that and say, yeah, no, you're not. And they're gonna delete the whole file. Because all you're saying is that we're just pushing this through so you can get some money from us, and we're not gonna play that game. I mean, think about it. If you're lending to someone, you say, well, here's a document that says this is only good until you hand us some money, and then we're gonna throw it out. Would you use it? No.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know, maybe once or twice.
what's that, I'm sorry?
Maybe used once or twice.
Yeah, because I would check with lenders, but I don't know any lender that would take it.
Write a disclaimer in there.
Yeah, just
let's do a disclaimer saying, you know, it's, your lender may not
Because that
agree to
lender's,
this agreement or whatever.
that lender's gonna go right to the title company right now.
We can delete it. They can apply for a variance if they want that better.
Yeah.
Better.
Lot size minimum variance.
Temporary.
But if their lot is that, if their parcel is that large, what they have to put it into 240s or whatever it may be.
So is the tax segregation form, planning department form or an assessor form?
And not ours.
So if they walk in, the assessor's office and say, I want to tax segregate my land here, they're going to hand them the form, they're going to fill it out and do it.
It has to be signed by us.
So there's a little background homework would have to be done to take that out.
I see what you're saying.
Just so that, again, don't get wires crossed. Well, they said I could, you said.
But if it's there, the person wants it and they ask their lender, their loan gets killed, it's not the problem at Bonner County, it's their problem.
I get it.
Yeah.
We're not here to save everyone. If you want that document, I'll hand you the document, and if you lose your lending because they know you're playing a game, then that's your problem to play in the game.
Say something about it's available through the assessor's office or something, tax segregation.
And that's always been,
Just kind of.
it's the assessor, because you want it taxed differently, you want it listed differently.
Well,
Tax
it may be as simple as to just leave this language out and leave that other stuff in there.
Yeah.
I mean, the purpose of this was because people come in so rare that we have to go learn the process every time someone comes in.
And you know, the best source too is your title company. They're gonna tell you exactly what they will insure, what they will take on. And if there were a separate parcel, you know, anything described except that whole piece, they're gonna go,
Right.
And the thing is too, who's gonna describe that piece?
Well, and truly, there are concerns.
Yeah.
I think this is how some of these 1 acre parcels were created. Is they were done this way and then they went through bankruptcy. And the bank took that 1 acre parcel with the house on it.
Probably
And left the, right?
Weird.
Yeah, there's 1 acre parcel out in Coquilala. I swear this is how it happened.
Really. Yeah, could be, but I can tell you what Matt and I run into, so then whatever's gonna help the community to get things through without a lot of confusion.
Yep. So delete the new language, delete the whole thing.
For me, I would delete the language referring to the 1 acre.
I mean, how would that change the implication of it if you just on number 5 took off recorded legal description? Doesn't necessarily need to be recorded for the tax segregation form, because when you record it, it makes it into the lot. And if it's just a legal description on the tax segregation form and not recorded, then it doesn't make it a lot.
Well, I agree. I think that, that again, but that's what it says up above. So again, Haley was she just spelled out the process here. It says the same thing above. It says the financing of any portions of the lot, provided that the portion separated and the remaining portion stay together to that they meet the minimum zoning requirements together, right?
But you see what I'm saying, you just take out the recorded part of it, but it won't.
Well, that's what I said. Maybe it's easier to just delete that language and leave the rest of it there.
I'm fine with that.
Very good. Okay, what's next?
You were going to talk about the 4 versus 10.
Well,
Yeah, we're back at the ring down here too.
Yeah, we gotta. So
let's go 9. Because then you could, if you had 100 acres, you could just do a flat across 10 acres for
that's an interesting concept.
10 10 acres for 10 lots, or if you had a 40 and a 5, 8, you could do 8 right off the bat. So if you had 80 acres and a 5, that would trigger that. Brings the number down a little bit.
I think it needs to bring the number down a lot.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
a
go
couple of
back.
the comments were, you're eliminating all of the subdivision requirements by expanding it from 4 to 10, meaning that the 1 to 4 now don't have those same subdivision requirements. I looked through the code and I'm not, other than, that's the question I asked before about under minor land divisions, does it reference going back and picking up the requirements of 624 for roads? Because 16624 applies to subdivisions, and you can then go back and say in the minor land divisions, 16624 applies, A, B, C, D, or whichever. I think it does. Yeah, right there. So I'm not sure what they found was missing, whether they didn't realize that preliminary plats right now, 5 and more lots, or 10 lots, 11 or more, don't come to this commission for review as a preliminary plat.
11 or more, they do.
They do?
Yeah.
Because that's
That's how rare it happens. We have like Quail Ridge and Merle's Estates.
Okay, and I thought those were brought to us because the department made the decision that these really should have a hearing.
No.
Because it doesn't, I don't see it in the, it talks about the commission.
It's in the preliminary plat process.
Preliminary plat process, right?
Yeah.
Talks about the commission, so.
Great.
So, let me go on with this. So what would bring in enough conditions, design standards, whatever, to satisfy what we heard tonight in some of the letters and so forth? There are the road standards. They've been added in. The notice, I thought at one time we still had the notice to people within 300 feet was still there, but it doesn't require a hearing for minor land division.
No. Took out the notice. Yep. Because again,
I understand the issue. If it meets, it meets. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I understand what somebody said, 2 or 3 people said collectively. I think what Brian was saying too, about maps and mapping and so forth. It's not totally accurate. But somebody asked a question on that. And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Minor land divisions, it's a tabletop review. It's not a boots on the ground review.
correct.
Yeah. And to do that would be
It's a tabletop review by Road and Bridge, by
everybody.
county surveyor. Yes.
Road and Bridge is a little
By the
different.
assessor's
They've
office.
got, it's a finite thing to talk about there, the roads that they maintain. So they're more aware of them. Land across the county, for the county planning staff to be aware of every parcel, no way. And it does always add to the review to see it from the ground perspective. I mean, we do the variances.
But that's what the surveyor's for. So, we turn on the layer map and we see that there's wetlands. They have to delineate that or show it.
To show it on the plat.
So the surveyor's the boots on the ground for those things.
I'm trying to think what impact, what regulated situation could be brought to the county's attention by a neighbor that the county staff wouldn't be aware of. That's what I'm grappling with. They all allude to it. You don't see it, we see it, we can advise you of it. I'm trying to figure what it would be.
Particularly if it's limited to the decision criteria.
Right.
About whether it
I
goes
think
forward.
that's a good move to put that in there, to say, here's the decision, to the public, here's what the code says. Because does the public know the code? Very few. So, and we always state that at our hearings, we're reviewing this under the county code. If it meets county code, then it should be approved. If it doesn't, then it shouldn't. So what county code requirement is there now that the neighbors are gonna be aware of that we aren't. And the flip side is, what do they feel should be in the county code that isn't there now? Well, that's a different subject. That may be part of this tonight, but it's basically, it's a broader subject, which we would hope to start cracking into with the comprehensive plan update. Yeah.
I think that's true. I think a lot of people, the concerns that they want to talk about at this time really are concerns that needed to be discussed when the zone was established.
Absolutely.
Hence the
And-
reason for that.
Right, they're concerned about the density
Right.
and the development, and that was really at the zone time that should have been discussed, not the subdivision.
Gentleman that spoke toward the end, he said, you know, what's the impact of developing all that? Well, if people realized under existing zoning, technically speaking, every single parcel of ground in the county could be developed. You know what that would look like? Good grief, we all go screaming for, I don't know, Upper Yukon or something.
The yak.
Yeah, the yak. But no, it won't happen. But even if a mere 70% or 50% of that was to be accomplished, we'd still, whoa, wait a minute, we gotta stop this. We never envisioned this. Well, of course you didn't. But then again, did we?
So, I mean, I gave you some experience over the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, Merle's Estates was a 14 lot subdivision. No comments from them. It was 1 acre lots up at Priest Lake. Quail Ridge was first 16 lots and then 18 lots. At the zone change, the fire department said, there's only one way in and out. These roads should be paved. So we made a requirement, not a condition, a requirement at the zone change that the roads had to be paved.
Yep.
So that's why the roads inside Quail Ridge are paved.
Now,
Based on,
was that something that came from the fire district? So it came from agency review of the preliminary plat
it did it
or the zone change.
for the zone change, yes.
So that's good. That was an appropriate catch. I think the very same comment came from those now residents of Quail Ridge saying, boy, these roads are really inadequate. Same comment.
Right.
I think overall, we're getting kind of going off base here, but
Well, yeah,
we've got to be more, I don't know whether it's sensitive to or responsive to those kind of comments and really push the agencies responsible for maintenance, upkeep and everything. Are you sure overall you're adequate? Sure, this 4 lot subdivision is going to tip your scale, but 30 of them down the same road? We're not going to wait till the 29th one to say, whoa, wait a minute, we're in bad shape here. We're beginning, I mean, look what happened up in Selly. Oh yeah, they tell the Selly committee, oh, we're doing fine, everything. Then the district turns around and said, well, I think we need even impact fees. What?
yeah.
What?
Fire district.
You know, you can't, why are they so afraid to say, I know why, it's gonna cost somebody money. You know, the school district is the same way. I remember back in the 80s, we didn't live here then, but the big discussion was, man, all that growth in the 70s, our schools, we got mobiles all over the place and all this kind of stuff. We need more teachers, we need better facilities, we're gonna have to have a bigger levy. And you can't say that in the context of a comprehensive plan update because, time to do the dance.
All
Anyway,
right, so let's
Yeah.
hit the key bullet points.
Do we-
We covered the signs and the notices. We'll deal that with because we'll have to change a lot of things in the workshop.
Suzanne.
There was a 2-year thing, we didn't hit the 2-year thing.
For family.
2-year.
And
Well, let's finish this.
the family split, and I was part of that discussion, was to get the family member to take a stake in that piece of property. That's what that was about.
Yeah.
So,
But does that 2-year thing hurt it or help it?
Isn't it
it's supposed to be for family. I mean, you're supposed to be leaving it
I mean,
to an heir and not to be sold, however people sell it. People were using it as a quick tool
Just as
to get out of town.
So that's almost a hollow sentence anyways. So like, yeah, if you're gifted, like, okay, I'll sell it to you for $500.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, what is that accomplishing?
that's another topic for another day. I think what was proposed is,
I think there was, originally it was 4 years. We knocked it down to 2 years.
it's almost had a
We
time
did
frame.
change that.
Yeah, it's got a time frame, and I said that, and I'll say again, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, it's arbitrary.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So what are the thoughts?
Out it goes.
The heirs have to be named at the deed. Heirs and successors.
What about the, you know, I read over it again, and I think it's probably fine as is, but the comment from someone on Zoom about a lot getting split by a public action, becoming 2 lots.
That was, previously, we approved the previous file, and that's kind of what she was getting to.
Yeah, well, it reads now like it'll be approved, but say you dedicate a public right of way in the middle of the lot. Would that become a public action? I don't know, just asking the question.
How would you dedicate that for the county to consider it to be dedicated? What are the requirements?
You either deed it outright, or you walk in the door and say, there's a deed for 60 feet across my property.
Yeah, I know that, but with and different things like that, are they going to?
I don't know, I mean, you know, I was just saying, theoretically, anybody could walk in upstairs and present a deed to the county commission saying, here's a deed for 60 feet across my property. I want it to be public right of way. It's up to them to say yes or no. There's no other mechanism. Typically, it's through a subdivision.
It has to be platted.
So,
State law
so
says
that
dedication has to be platted.
dedication has to come with the plat.
No, it just says it has to be platted. Just saying what it says.
And I mean,
Call it a subdivision, minor land areas, it says it in here.
the county can agree to take it over, but with the understanding that it's not maintained.
Well, that's the statement on the plat.
Yeah, they don't take it over formally.
Yeah.
So they may be dedicated to the public, but the county has not accepted them.
Idaho is very different that way compared to 49 other states. I don't know of another one that can do that.
Lots of different.
Yeah. So, public right of way, public privately maintained. Weird.
So the county has a 40-acre piece on Grouse Creek. Okay? Well, no, that's the house for the house torn down and then floods. So there's a public piece of land, but it doesn't have a public easement to that piece of property. So
No access.
there is access, but it's not a public access, it's private.
Correct.
Correct.
So, what do you get?
Well, what I'm getting at is the 2 other property owners would have to buy into expanding that easement out public use, correct? Correct. They were gonna have to give up their ground because it's a small road right next to the creek. It's just a thought.
So what was your concern about that split, automatic split?
I was just circling back around to her comment because it's worded in a way now that it won't just go backwards, it'll go forward, which I think is good because that was her main question, I think, was,
Yeah. Around the budget.
yeah.
Well,
So what did you decide on the roads? Are you go to it?
On the what?
on the road inclusion for 621 A, C, and D on 10 lot.
Because I just noticed the boundary line adjustment also calls out A, C, and D.
Why would
Think that,
So, you know, the way that reads,
depending upon how.
which shall be developed for egress and egress, providing for ready access, meeting the standards. So it's like, it doesn't say it has to be built to those standards, right? It's saying it's providing for ready access to meet those standards.
Is it saying that it has to be built before a plat approval?
I don't think it's saying that. I think it's saying that the legal access has to meet, that the easement has to meet the requirements.
it says which is developed for? That already says or applies construction.
Legal access.
And I don't know what ready access means. That's not a common term.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I think it implies you can use it today. You can get to the property today on that developed egress.
That's why it was easier to leave these out when we did the minor line.
Yeah, I get there. Well, and that's existing language, so those are the standards.
The challenge with front load and all this stuff is like, is the, the bonding, and not that it's a staff problem, it's just.
We've got a huge number of individual amendments, changes that are lumped together in one document. And it's showing. So even at that, does that directive from Board of County Commissioners say now that this is a hearing for code change, we must make a recommendation to them within 10 days?
Yeah, that's what the code says.
Make the changes and they can change them back.
Well, I was it my understanding, right, that in that directive, it wasn't a continuance option?
There was not a continuance.
That's right, it was a yay or nay, or that's it. And total of what's written, or can we parse it out?
Okay.
What was advertised?
Yeah, it goes with what's advertised.
So,
We can pick a barrel, is it?
we done with that item? You happy with that?
Well, I'm still struggling. Does this satisfy legitimately the concerns that were raised in letters and what we've talked about across the board, not just the road standard, but there's other ones, a notice. What else was it?
We got the notice.
We have to sign in the notice. I think that's just not gonna involve this, but it's gonna involve
It trickles.
everything else that we noticed.
So signing or notice, the roads.
So you got the family split that, gonna take care of, we need the minor land division, put a number on those lots.
That's my point. If we make provisions that's going to adequately address those things, the notice, the roads, maybe panhandle health, if we put that in there on up to 10, I don't have a problem with 10. If those are preserved in the present language as a short plat, so I think, are we losing anything going from a short plat designation to a minor land division? Because that was the whole subject of getting rid of the 0 to the 1 to 4 short plats.
Well, why not keep the minor land division at 4 lots, everything above is subdivision? And not do the short.
Well, that was, yeah.
And involve panhandle health, and that seems to tie everything together.
Yeah, right. Years ago, that was the reasoning to go up to 10 on the short plats, because it was supposedly easier and less effect on everything, just because it was, but it still had higher requirements than the of late minor land division. So again, if that's the charge now that we're removing some of the things that were in the in the short plat process, softening it to get to a minor land division up to 10. That's the things that I wanted. So again, if there's no change from a subject or from a short plat, why even have up to 10? Keep it the way it is. 1 to 4, minor land division, 5 to 10, short plat, 11 and above, plat.
Bring Panhandle Health back in.
And bring Panhandle in. Massage the notice requirements to make it better. Again, as you've heard me say, I understand what the public is saying about the notice and the hearings. A short plat doesn't have a hearing, but that's the way it is today.
You know, I think as we go down the road, if we can work things around and we get to these bigger parcels that are going to be cut up, that along with what they're bringing in, let's say proven sewer, and proven water. Not necessarily drilling wells, but
we didn't even cover it because it wasn't proposed for a change. But right now, the black language about wells says you have to prove that the aquifer or the substrate can handle it. When have we seen such a report? I don't. Number one, like I said a couple of hearings ago, not every square foot of Bonner County has an aquifer, a defined aquifer, subsurface. It's groundwater, it's whatever. But to prove the adequacy of that water source, yeah.
Well, you can't. There's constant aquifers and mining for water.
Right. And mining for water, how are you going to prove that you're not going to affect your neighbor? You don't. You got to do drawdown studies of all the wells in the area like they did in Sagal. You got to prove that it's okay to have 15 more wells in that section. But we don't ever see that. But it's very expensive to do, very time consuming, very expensive. And there's seasons of water data, not just go out there and check it. I was do year round for 3 years. 40-gallon fire test for 6 hours.
So, a couple years ago, when we were faced with this situation, we sent a quick memo up to the board asking them to send this back to us. It seems like we made a recommendation, or the P&Z Commission made a recommendation on a portion of it, and then asked to have the rest of it sent back.
That's correct.
That's what we're on the alternative.
And so within 10 days, the board will have it on their business agenda, and they can make that decision to send that back. I believe that's the way it happened last time.
I think they refused to send it back.
No, they sent it
But
back.
did they?
Yeah, they did. Because one of the commissioners was here at the meeting then.
So, I get tired.
I know. So we
I'm
were
trying to follow that.
We were at keeping everything for short plat subdivision, right?
Yeah, I mean,
We
that's what I was just suggesting.
We need to discuss animal health, when they're gonna come in.
Yeah.
Come in, subdivision or short plat.
Okay. That's, I think, where I'm at.
I think that will cover us for a motion.
Do we shape the motion? Lost. There's many of the changes, the word changes in here that are okay, we're saying.
Yeah, but I think you just make the motion to not make a recommendation on the document and request that they send it back for more.
Okay.
For more time. With the understanding that if they choose not to send it back, your recommendation is gonna ultimately be a recommendation of denial. If it goes beyond the 10 days, it's a recommendation of denial. So if they choose not to send it back, that's what your recommendation. It's up to you.
Yeah, because a motion is a motion. It's the discussion that gives substance to it if there is any, but. Okay, so in that motion, we have to state, it always says when you make a motion, it has to be based on the facts. So in that motion, as we normally read, based on facts up to the date, well, we've talked about a lot of stuff tonight, so the motion could just say, based on the testimony at the hearing.
Correct.
And that would be sufficient, rather than having to list out all these things in our deliberation.
Correct.
So maybe list the specific thing that we want to look at.
That's where I was going. I think we should.
Which would be the 6 to 10 or 4 to 10, how many? Panhandle health and.
The noticing.
Signs and noticing.
And the
Hearings.
And I appreciate the concern to address Panhandle Health, but since this is the board that took it out, I don't know, sorry, I just don't understand.
We just said
What
something
changed?
upstairs and they're twerking it around. So it's, you know,
in our
we're hearing the people. If they don't hear the people.
I don't have a problem with it, I
It
just don't.
is. I mean, they're the elected officials.
I had to ask.
Yeah, well,
No, we understand that.
Okay.
Well, I got a question for you, Milton. Were you directed from them to take the short plat process out? Was that part of their intention?
Was it a meeting here? Was it a meeting upstairs? I don't recall.
We never talked about it here, so.
Yeah, I don't remember.
We've talked about it, we talked about it in the workshops.
We've talked about taking it out, but I'm not sure it was ever explained what the rationale was. So that's the way it came.
Yeah.
It was gone. I assume somebody said, let's simplify the process.
Well, that's been the overarching.
Yeah.
That has definitely been the overarching thing.
Yeah.
But still, you know, what's the rationale? Because, again, to quote the worn out phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is it broke?
And we could have had this discussion months ago.
Well, yeah, we should have had that discussion months ago. Whether we're not astute enough to catch that, I don't know.
We never started talking about it until after 8.
Yeah. It has to be 1 minute past 9.
Yep.
Okay.
Just speak loud enough where we can be sure we get the motion correct.
Right. Well, like here, these prompt. And this might just end up being a collective motion, not just one person's. Or we might have to massage it during discussion. We're asking, the motion is to continue.
Correct.
Asking, yeah.
No, but that's, why does it have to go upstairs? Why can't we as a body just continue?
We'd have to continue within 10 days.
Yep, you'd have to continue within 10 days. There's a decision, you have 10 days to make a decision. Sorry, I didn't, this code was written before I started.
Yeah. There's only 2 of us here that were around when that happened.
Send it upstairs and ask them to send it back.
It is what it is. Don's thinking about how to write it or read it.
Well, of course, the 2 that are formed up are approval, recommend approval, or recommend denial. So it doesn't fit. It's more like motion is a missive. It's a short letter of explanation. And procedural, I don't know how that, the appropriate motion here is to continue it to a date and time certain so that such and such can be further looked into or discussed or whatever. Rather under this mandate to give them a decision, which implies yea or nay within 10 days.
I'm open next Thursday night.
I'm not, I'm going to get called right now.
Would it be an approval to acknowledge the need for continued?
This may be the crazy thing to do, but do we recommend denial, knowing that they want this to happen, and send them a message that what we would really like is for them to send it back to us so we have more time to consider noticing and
yeah, it's either
whatever.
Denial at the
And they should be
current
motivated to send it back because they want it to happen. They asked for this in the first place.
So it's either deny and say it doesn't meet, or recommend approval with these changes. And it would have all of our stuff saying, don't extend the minor land divisions to 10, don't, or improve the noticing,
Correct.
the things that we said.
Right.
So it's one or the other, it's gotta be one or the other.
Yep. And that's not a bad idea either. Because it does give them something to.
Yep.
To work with.
Which do you think is the better strategy?
So if it was recommend denial, it would be because we're concerned about expanding it to 10 lots. We're concerned that there isn't adequate notice. We're concerned, so we just put them in the negative sense.
Right.
Rather than saying, here's the change, here's the fix to it.
Yep.
So, whichever way. I'm running out of words in the air, so I don't know if somebody else wants to make a motion.
Mr. Linscott has
Yeah. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Check it out, Jeremy.
Yes, Mr. Linscott.
I just had a question for Milton. So if you're gonna go ahead and make a motion for denial, you make the motion for denial with the changes that are proposed or with the change, or as the staff report was presented at the beginning of the meeting?
My thought was as is.
With the changes?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
the
but
changes we've already incorporated.
when you recommend denial, you have to say why. So do we find this inadequacy, so we can say, because we found inadequacy in section da-da-da-da, because it does go up to 10 lots, we think that's inadequate, or the notice is inadequate. So you have to say why. You know, otherwise, if it's approval, we just say as written, so forth, or as amended.
So here's the code. When a hearing is required before the P and Z Commission as prescribed in this section, and this section is the amendment section, the Commission shall produce written findings and transmit them to the board within 10 working days of the date of the hearing. The time limit can be extended or modified by written consent of the Board of County Commissioners. Failure of the commission to issue a decision prescribed shall be deemed a denial and recommendation of denial. So it's like I said, ask permission for the opportunity to continue this file.
Okay, so all right, so the first thing we do is to make a motion to.
And you don't have to make a recommendation because if it goes without 10 days, it goes beyond 10 days.
We need to have a motion that we all agree on. So the motion would be to request from the Board of County Commissioners more time to consider this because of these factors.
Yep.
All right, so.
So,
Maybe include that, a memo from the chair requesting this.
so are you doing it to a date and time certain or just?
No, it sounds like we don't need to. Well.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it isn't. Because it's gonna give them, based on the whole reason that directive came was because the commission was slow to decide and just gonna put it off forever.
Right.
Let's show them good faith and say, we're asking for an extension in order to make a decision on this, and we will hold another hearing. So what do we got for advertising dates?
Well, to continue would be the best.
Based on public testimony.
Well, yeah, because we always say that considering testimony taken at the hearing.
Can we do it at the next meeting or do we need more time for those?
I'm pulling that up right now.
So it's not time for noticing, it's.
Time on the agenda.
Yeah, and we're full through April, aren't we?
Well, once April 15th hits, that meetings, they go to 5 files a night. Through June, or through middle of June.
So it's either on a regularly scheduled night or an interim non-scheduled at this point.
Correct.
Which we can call.
Those are all.
But not next week, it's two. Be out of town. My daughter will, I'm gonna expect she's gonna be, I don't show up. No.
I can try a motion. You guys can shoot it down.
Okay,
Just a
here we
minute,
go.
if we're doing a date and time certain, I need to find a date first.
Yep. So where are we? Can be April 1st? April 1st, only 3 files?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna look at.
April Fool's Day?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think we should do
I think there's only 3 files that night.
it.
3 files.
So April 1st would be 2 weeks. So that would give us enough time to update this document.
Okay, I mean, based on our thoughts tonight.
Yes.
And some further thought, just to massage stuff and make sure that it reads right and everything
Yep.
else.
We can do
That
that.
doesn't do anything for the whole discussion with Panhandle because it's, yeah, that's gonna take some major.
I don't have a problem putting that sanitary restrictions are required.
Well, I mean, we can put it in.
No, let's put it in.
We can put it in, right, that's correct.
It's a different, it's different folks upstairs now, okay? So
Yeah, and,
maybe it might flip, maybe it might not.
well,
It's not different folks upstairs. It's the same 3 last year.
No, I'm talking about previous years.
all the way back to history about doing.
Right, correct.
County-
But all of these changes were taken out last year.
No, I was just talking about the relationship between Penn and Bill and the 3 guys.
I encourage,
Yes.
Because that is the complaint we hear week after week.
it is,
And,
absolutely. I hear more than
And
you.
so it's a monkey in the room and we need to deal with it again.
Yep.
And see what happens.
So we can put that in. Not a motion tonight, but, so, are we set? Do we want to go for?
Panhandle Health, the number of lots and a minor.
You want to write it out on the board, so here's board.
Here,
Just
I'll
gonna-
I'll just give
You're
her
gonna
a
wing
shot
it?
and see.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, help.
wing it.
Okay. This is Commissioner Bradish. I move to request a continuance to the county commissioners, this project file AM 0016-20 to amend the section of Title 12 Bonner County Revised Code as presented and amended in this hearing based on the following conclusions. Conclusion 3, these proposed amendments may not be in accord with Bonner County Comprehensive Plan in community design, which encompasses the recommendation of between 4 and 10 lots in a minor land division, and natural resources which could be affected by the inclusion of Panhandle Health District up front in the planning process, and the effects of these amendments on land use countywide.
To a date and time certain.
To a date and time certain of April 1st
At 5:30 p.m.
at 5:30 p.m. 2020.
1500 Highway 2.
1500 Highway 2.
Sanford, Idaho.
Sanford, Idaho.
United States of America.
United States of America.
Okay.
The decision is based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt.
No, you're good.
That's it. There.
Yep, you're good with your motion.
This action does not result in taking
Waiting a broken wing.
Oh, it's.
Okay, Commissioner Bradish has made a motion to ask county commissioners for extended time for amendment 0016-20 text amendment, Bonner County Revised Code, Title 12. Any discussion?
We need a second.
Commissioner Glasswell, second.
Now we can discuss.
Any discussion?
So, is everybody totally satisfied? Everybody satisfied with that language and we covered everything?
I'm more than willing to amend my motion.
Sounded good. Anybody catch anything that
Jane will
harder,
straighten out
better,
the,
softer?
she'll clean it up for us. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so
We haven't voted.
okay, so Commissioner Glasgow has seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 5-0. What was that about? Anything else, Bill?
Not on this, we need to talk to for a minute.
Okay, so we're.
Ryan, if you move to different
Don't adjourn just yet.
Oh, we could. Okay, we're gonna
I
move
have one
on to
item I have got to talk to you about.
discussion of commissioners and staff updates. So,
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huh?
Wasn't on the agenda.
I have to talk about it though. It'll be on the agenda next time. So I know you're talking. I appreciate you standing. So we've been talking about, so I've got a couple new people starting. One started this week, working really well with GIS stuff. Got another one coming in a couple weeks. So the idea was we're gonna focus on the comprehensive plan with some of the extra help that we have in the office. So I asked the commissioners if we could use Sir Don as a lead or consultant or whatever on helping with the comprehensive plan. So the attorney's office said that it was okay to offer per diem, but this committee the commission needs to approve that agreement to have Don work with the planning department on the update of the comprehensive plan. I was pleased with the decision of the attorney's office that it wasn't a conflict of interest, but it couldn't be an independent contractor. So tried to get you,
So under the blue book preamble, where it talks about what the duties of the commission, where it says that the commission can appoint a subcommittee or such, or consultant or anything, so the commission could appoint me as the whatever.
Yep.
Pick a word, pick a name.
I appoint you to work for
Per diem.
Per diem. Public Relations Officer.
We tried that, it didn't work.
No.
It was called the hearing examiner. He wouldn't take it.
It didn't fly either.
So that'll be on the agenda in 2 weeks. Yeah, but if you're okay with that idea.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay with it.
Okay. I really, it will, man, if I could focus on one thing, I would be really good at one thing, right? But I have all these folks doing all different things. And so finishing up this sub-area plan has been so frustrating because they want things from me that I'm writing 3 staff reports, right? And so we're getting there. I see the light now.
So this, as you've explained before, this new staff member, she needs to get on board and get her feet into Bonner County and process. So there will still be some, what do you want to call it, indoctrination of her, just to know the ropes of how things go.
Correct.
But at sometime she will be potentially totally devoted to comprehensive plan issues.
Probably mostly. She'll probably do, I mean, at the rate we're going with our schedule, we like 27 files scheduled for hearing. So
Here's Chad.
So as Chad is getting introduced to GIS permissions on Monday, and so after Monday, he'll be able to dig into GIS and we'll start to be able to figure out how to pull data out of all this stuff. Yeah, it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, well.
So this is Chad Chambers from, I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Chad Chambers, new planner here, Bonner County, happy to be here. My background is kind of in GIS. I've been using it since 2014 in my undergrad. I went on to do an advanced degree in GIS, or geospatial technologies rather, but I have a passion for it, love it, and yeah, be happy to answer any questions.
Where'd you move from?
Syracuse, New York, so upstate New York. I was attending school there. I'm originally from Kirkland, Washington though, suburb.
Oh, okay.
20 miles
So
north
you
of
know the
Seattle.
area, you've been over here previous years.
Syracuse. Say it.
Yeah. Fix the projections, please, please. It's possible.
Are they currently in state plane?
I don't know what they have up there.
Well, it's a mixture.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's part of the problem. Nobody can agree. Let's just use one. That's nationwide, worldwide, that's the issue. So.
Well, if they go to LiDAR, shouldn't that help fix some of this?
No, again, it's all according to the accuracy. LiDAR could be 30 meters, it could be a quarter of an inch.
I think it will improve LiDAR.
So that's just the survey, that's agreeing on a projection. Essentially nationwide, if not continent-wide.
We have two different projections.
Yeah.
Idaho.
Yeah, we're still using
83.
Yeah, still using 29. 29.
So they may not be totally dedicated to comp planning, but maybe I could get you as much as half-time from both of them. So together we can be working on gathering the data to help back up the goals and policies. And then it'll just be reviewing the documents and creating.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but along those lines, I've gone to Northern Lights and Avista and asked them if we can tap into there or get a shapefile from them of their new hookups for the last, whatever, 4 or 5 years, because they do have it spatially. Right. No. And then if they can filter it once, if they've got the data to say this is a new house, so that should at least come as corroboration of the building location permits that are for new residents. So just another one. So both of the Vista, and I haven't heard back totally from them, but they're working.
And I think PhD is available online. We could download their data set online and
we've got that, we've got well logs now online. So there's essentially raw data out there that we can look at and hopefully digest it.
So then we could know where this 168,000 gallons of sewage is being released.
All at once at once.
You know how much sand is in the Hoodoo Valley?
Right. I'd love to have in my bag of
Good to
tricks
know.
the total acreage of private property outside of incorporated area in Bonner County. I'd love to have that number, just as because it's going to blow everybody away. And then 187,000 gallons, is going to see.
Yeah, I know. Yep. That's all I got. Other than
So this meeting is adjourned till continued till April 1st, 2021, 1500 Highway 2, Sandpoint, Idaho, 923.
Are you